What's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. Subscribe to Saturday Down South on YouTube. I am Connor O'Gara. Will, week 7. Week 7, that sounds so late. I don't mean to be that guy. We don't wish time away. I know we could say that on every single preview pod. Oh my God, this season is going by so unbelievably fast. Week 7 is the first time in which people start throwing out halfway point. I refuse to do that. This is not the halfway point of the season, in my opinion. That's at least until after week 7. But my God, it's going too fast.
Yeah, you know what? I will credit the 12-team playoff here. I feel like the pacing of the season this year has been the most perfect I've ever seen it, because it really did start with a bang, with the week 1 matchups. Don't worry about week 0 this year, folks. But it feels like there have really been marquee games every week. So my usual kind of copium there is well, it's really just about your conference schedule. It's really about the SEC. And there's still a lot that we have to learn about these teams in conference play, obviously. But I'm looking at the schedule and it's yeah, this has been a full year already. And yet, the conference is very much still to be decided.
If you want a comforting thought, in addition to those points, we're still more than 3 months away from the national championship. So as far as I'm concerned, that's basically an entire season that we have ahead of us. And we don't need to get into how many weeks of the regular season we have left. No. More than 3 months from now, we still won't even know who the national champ is. So that is a win in my book. We are not calling it the midseason point. We are just going to appreciate each and every Saturday that we have. And we have a good one. Good Saturday. Full slate of SEC games. 6 games to break down in week 7 that we will do shortly here. We've got Laura Rutledge coming up in a bit here. We have Lad of the Week. But first, word from our friends at Dabble. Guys, Dabble, it has been such a great year so far of football. If you're one of these people that maybe you don't watch a full Sunday or something like that, you can't watch a full Saturday, but you like to kind of pick and choose your spots. Monday Night Football is really good this week and you want a little bit of the action, Dabble is the place to do it. It is one of the newest and best apps in the daily fantasy space. They've wasted no time making a name for themselves. Dabble social function, it is second to none. They offer a wide variety of sports for making picks, including college football, NFL. We've got NBA coming up really soon. Use promo code SDS2 when you sign up today. Receive $25 in bonus cash. No deposit required. Again, that is promo code SDS2 for $25 in bonus cash, courtesy of the good folks at Dabble. Will, week 7. Let's start with the game that is kicking off at noon that the home fans wish was very much not kicking off at noon. Number 8 Alabama, 3-point favorites on the road against number 14 Mizzou. The over-under I have is 7 yards per carry for Mizzou. It's a lot.
Somebody could run the ball. Yeah.
Quietly, that's what Alabama's allowed the last 2 games. When you win, you can move past these things. When you play a team that runs the ball like Mizzou does, that might not be such an easy thing to move past. This is your last chance, folks listening to this show, who I think know this name, but if you have friends that talk about college football that don't bring up these people, talking about, oh, this guy's a favorite for the Heisman Trophy, and they're not talking about that. This is your last chance to not know the name Ahmad Hardy. Okay? Last chance. This is
all the boys at the function start bringing up Ahmad Hardy. How you doing? You heard of Ahmad Hardy? He's cooking right now.
Have you seen some of the Ahmad Hardy runs this year? Pull them up on your phone, show a random stranger. I don't care. Make it known. Ahmad Hardy is not your average football player, okay? This guy is very, very special. He had a bye week last week. He still leads the nation in rushing by 37 yards. Yeah, he's good. Very, very good.
Also helps Mizzou identity, folks. They are pounding the rock. I drink his smile is from ear to ear.
Jamal Roberts averaging 7.3 yards per carry as well for this team. So it's not all just Ahmad Hardy, but Bo Perbula, he is still a threat with his legs. We said after the opener, he's probably not going to last this long if he doesn't learn how to protect himself. If fewer design runs would make more sense for him. 4 design runs in the opener, just 4 cents, 1 per game. So they've really kind of taken that to heart. Average 3 scrambles per game. It's a 3-headed rushing attack similar to A&M in some ways. The production is similar to, interestingly enough, Florida State. Florida State is the only power conference team who averages more rushing yards per game than Mizzou. But Mizzou runs it 49 times per game, and that is the most of any power conference team, just a little bit more than Florida State. Would expect that they will stick with the run more than Vandy did last week, who had 112 rushing yards. on 5 carries in the first quarter, but then only ran the ball 14 more times in the last 3 quarters of that game. That is what makes this even more than the Georgia game, even more than the Vandy game, even more than the revenge that they were seeking for Alabama. This is the ultimate how much have you moved past Florida State game for Alabama, okay? Just go out and beat your third-ranked team in as many weeks. No big deal. That's what you're asking Alabama to do and to correct its biggest area of weakness. Will, do you know how many times during the Saban era Alabama beat 3 consecutive AP top 25 teams without any sort of bye week or anything like that or extra rest in between?
I feel like if it's trivia, it's a lower number, so I'm gonna guess 0.
One. Just one. And honestly, I wasn't even sure that it was one. It was 2016. And we're, again, no bye weeks in between. So at number 16, Arkansas, at number 9, Tennessee, and against number 6, A&M. Those teams didn't end up being great. I think Georgia will end up being better than all 3 of those teams, and that will probably add to this feat if Alabama can accomplish it. But I bring this up because some of the most memorable Alabama losses of the Saban era came at the end of a 3-week stretch like this. 2010 at South Carolina, 2012 A&M, the Johnny Manziel game. That was at the end of this 3-week stretch of 3 consecutive AP top 25 teams. It's just not something that you get very often. Okay. And even in
That's
this,
actually great context, because imagine you're tired or you're trying to like run around and chase Johnny Manziel. It's like,
yeah. Imagine you're tired and having to run around trying to chase Ahmad Hardy. Doesn't seem like a fun thing to have to do. And those losses, obviously, different context because it's the BCS era, and Alabama, even if it loses this game, still with 2 losses, it's only 1 loss in conference play. Nobody would be looking at Alabama saying, oh, well, this means their playoff path is absolutely done. They've done a lot of work to be able to make sure that they actually have a playoff path by the work that they've done the last 2 weeks. Speaking of that context of this what this means overall, and 12-team playoff, all those things. This is so massive for Mizzou for some obvious and some maybe not as obvious reasons. I was trying to find the right way to contextualize this, and this basically, because the obvious is sitting there, right? The obvious is team without tons of historical success hosts premier program. Like, I think anybody watching this who just turns this on, like Lauren, can turn this game on and probably pick up on that storyline. This is more than that. It's not just picking up that marquee win for the resume. It's not just speaking to that AP voter who put Penn State at number 19 and left Mizzou unranked. Can we?
They might have just confused the mascots. They might have seen little Truman, thought he was that scary Nittany Lion. You never know. I love the public AP polls. I wish we could publicly shame more people for their selections, because stand on that. You made that decision,
Or just don't admit you made a mistake. 3 most underused words in the English language, Will. I was wrong. Just saying.
That's so true. And nobody ever says that. That's actually getting less common as time goes on. It's like, no, you haven't seen the strictest schedule for Penn State, actually.
Oh, my God. If they were playing tomorrow, who would be favored? Oh, God. Anyway, 3 teams have won the SEC in the playoff era, Will. Alabama, Georgia, LSU. Might have known that. Probably, could assume that those are considered the 3 premier programs in the SEC, right? Mizzou is 2-18 against those teams to join the SEC. 2013 against Georgia, and then they won 2020 COVID game against LSU. Mizzou has 1 win against an AP top 10 team in the playoff era. So 2023 Cotton Bowl against Ohio State. Great win. Awesome win for Mizzou.
We were all celebrated seated. We were all there. We celebrated it exactly. Glad it happened.
Gave a lot of respect to Mizzou. It's been maybe the signature victory as part of this impressive 2-year run that they hope is extending into a 3rd year. But it wasn't something that could impact playoff seeding. In the playoff era, Will, Mizzou has 0 regular season wins against AP top 10 teams. This can be the first. I truly think the biggest mismatch in this game is the Mizzou rushing attack against Alabama, and I think it'll have a lot of success. But, and here's the thing that Mizzou fans don't want to hear, but they know they're going to hear it. The Mizzou way for this to end would be like a blocked extra point in a back and forth game that proves to be the difference in a 28-27 Alabama win. And that's what I'm going to predict. I think that's how this plays out for an Alabama team that would like to lean more on Ty Simpson than Jam Miller against the nation's top run defense. Because if you haven't been watching Mizzou, yes, they have the nation's top run defense. I think this adds to the notion that Ty Simpson is progressing and becoming a very, very special player in this Ryan Grubb, Kalen DeBoer offense. I still think he's going to take some bad sacks in this game, but he makes enough plays to lift Alabama to a remarkable 3-game stretch of top 25 wins. That is going to say a lot about this team and is going to matter a lot over the next couple months.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting about this game, right? And let's start off, you talked about the kickoff time. So Mizzou, when they have been successful, I feel like we talked about their identity, but it has very much been a nobody believes in us team, right? And we talked about, giving up the play calling duties, and we talked about kind of like I literally said Mizzou was boring right before they started the season, had that big win against Kansas State, where it was kind of the Luther Burden. We know how to use this guy game, right? And so I think when
big
they've
game
been
for
successful,
2023 to like set this run in motion. It's a good point.
yeah. Yeah. And so I think that like Drink is truly, it's kind of like the Billy Napier thing we were talking about with his back against the wall, but it's felt like his back has been against the wall for a couple of years. And when those expectations have been high, like last year, maybe it hasn't played out the same way, but like talking about the kickoff time, it's like which team is playing their game or which team is comfortable with the environment. For Mizzou, they're used to being doubted. They're used to having their games stuck at noon. I'm actually pretty sure that LSU game, that the only loss they have at home over this run,
yep,
was an 11 a.m. kickoff. And I remember watching that game and being like, what? This is such a great game. Why are we doing this? So Mizzou has been perpetually slept on. That's part of their identity. I think Alabama is used to, going into Athens, going to Sanford Stadium, having the big light show, having like waiting all day, having that timing. Whereas these Mizzou players have kind of dealt with this over the course of like their time there. So I think that kind of benefits them, to be honest, because, they're used to the stadium. The fans have been seeing this team have this identity for a long time at this point. Pull up a rock, the view's fine. Those guys are used to bringing it for home games. They have this amazing record at home, and they do a lot of things like you hit on that I think could kind of be scary as an Alabama fan. In the Vandy game, I said that was one of the failings of Vandy's game plan, is that they kept leaning on Diego Pavia's arm down the stretch there, when his legs and some of the like running plays were more of what was working for Vandy in the first half. I don't think Drake is going to get away from that. But it's like the good and the bad thing is this fits right in their identity, right? Because there are so many reasons to actually like Mizzou into this game and that aren't hopium. Because I think they will stick with that identity. It's funny you talked about FSU versus Mizzou. That is so fitting of both Drink and Gus Malzahn, that one team is calling more run plays, but one team is ending up with more success. Gus Malzahn just kind of shows up and goes by vibes, but Drake is going to pound that rock. And if he gets away from that, it would be so shocking to me. That being said, unfortunately, I think we are getting to this point where you can kind of plan on the weird bad play for Mizzou in these bigger games. I think it's just enough data, like I said, over the last couple of years. So I think we're going to like what we see out of Mizzou. I hope so. I hope we see that kind of progression, that we're really seeing the style of offense that Drink wants to run here with the running quarterback that really fits his vibe, with the two great running backs. Like you hit on the 3-headed rushing attack. But at the same, like, I think on paper, this is a game that Mizzou should win, but under Kalen DeBoer, Bama has found a way to make the most ridiculous good play you've ever seen, and Mizzou has found a way to make the most ridiculous bad play you've ever seen. So I hate to simplify it like that, but I could just so clearly picture it's 4th and 1, Caden Proctor carry for 1.5 yards, and like, oh, we don't get the ball back. And I hate to say that, Mizzou. I hope you guys prove me wrong, but I really have picked you guys a lot in these big games. And I just find myself like, you guys had such a good game plan. You did 99%, right? Just turn the test in. So again, hopefully I think it will be a great game. And obviously, for our jobs, I always try to pull for an upset, but I think with what we've seen out of DeBoer, guy is just a machine. He's kind of gotten the road warrior, like that curse off of his back where he could only win at Bryant-Denny after winning, at Stanford, like we talked about. So I think this team is battle tested. And I mean, hey, who knows better than me how to overcome a bad loss against Florida State? It can be done.
He is right now 17-3 against AP top 25 teams. Yes, he's also nuts. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, he's 3-5 away from Tuscaloosa during his time at Alabama.
Come on, don't worry about it. Semantics.
Right? What wins out? And is this a coming out party for Mizzou? Because as much as the 11 a.m. window frustrates you, it is an opportunity for everybody to be watching your game and to be watching a top 25 game in which you can pull off one of these victories, and all of a sudden you're looking at the remainder of that schedule going, guys, Mizzou has a path to Atlanta. You got to win this game to have that path. But
And really
things
quick,
open
I'll
up.
say, we talked about the playoff era, and that's all correct. I'm not disagreeing with that, but I'm sure Mizzou fans would be jumping up and down saying, guys, we've made it to Atlanta more than a lot of these teams y'all hype up every year.
Yeah.
Like, they've had a history of success in this conference.
And look, that was, 2014 losing in the SEC championship to Alabama. You lose that game 42-13. Alabama runs all over you that game. And Mizzou has not beaten Alabama in 50 years. 50 years. It's been half a century.
We got a presidential administration. That was way back in the day, 50 years ago.
75 was Nixon still? Nixon or Ford? Will, could we get tech to look that one up? I think it's Nixon. 75's got to be, right?
Google's AI is saying Gerald Ford, who was 74 to 77. So that was the Gerald Ford administration. Famous football guy.
Yes, famous Michigan man. One Gerald Ford is. Yeah, look, for all the reasons that I laid out of why Mizzou can lose this game and just find a way to have something go poorly, it would be that much more impactful if they were able to win this game. And all of a sudden we're talking about Mizzou getting in the top 10, which I realize they've been the last 2 years. So that's not the end all be all, but it's being in the top 10 with a proven identity that just went out and did something to an Alabama team that everybody is now respecting. This would be totally different if this were week 3 or even week 4, but the context of who Alabama's been, how battle tested they've been so far, would add so much credibility to what Mizzou has built this year. I hope we get a really good game to be able to kick off the day. All right, well, Red River, number 6 Oklahoma, unranked Texas. Yeah, unranked.
You know Texas. Who it is mid-season for? Texas Longhorns.
Yeah, very much midseason. It got late pretty early for Texas, who was a 1.5 point favorite in this one. TBD on that spread changing, as Josh Pate reported. FanDuel Sportsbook has this game as a 1.5 point spread, with Texas being favored under the assumption John Mateer is playing, and it's a 5.5 point spread if he is not. So keep an eye on that. We're recording this Wednesday, so we're recording this before injury reports are coming out and all that stuff. And obviously, all the Dr. Shin and Chipotle updates in the world that we've been able to get over the course of the last week plus 2 weeks, whatever, will probably add more twists and turns to this whole John Mateer saga and whatnot. But the over-under is 0.5 John Mateer snaps, of course, obviously. As of this recording, all we know, Pete Thamel reported that Mateer is pushing to play, you think, and Brent Venables is listening to doctors, preferably Dr. Shin, and Mateer isn't playing unless he's in the good-on-good reps in practice. If you saw
like Mateer, it's like they have him like in a kennel, they have a blanket over it, they're like, stop trying to push to play. He's like rattling the bar, let me out, I gotta get the first team reps and beat Texas.
He might be. He might just be. I don't know that he grew up hating Texas because he grew up in the Lone Star State, but he certainly understands what this rivalry means, and what this means for his Oklahoma team is obviously a lot. And look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I have a crystal ball and I could look into the future, but it's not going to surprise me if John Mateer is out there. It's also not going to surprise Texas if John Mateer is out there. Steve Sarkisian said that they are preparing for him to be the starter. How much gamesmanship is going on here? I don't know. We'll be able to play the results with that. Okay. Maybe post game, we're going to find out, oh yeah, we knew he was going to play on Tuesday. Maybe. I don't know. Clearly though, there is a greater than 0.0% chance that John Mateer plays, which will be 17 days removed from the surgery he had on the broken bone to fix his hand by one Dr. Shin.
I would say real quick, it would be the most Ben Arbuckle move ever to just walk him out there for the start, like for the first snap, give him a handoff, have Texas like, oh, he's here, and then just never see him again.
Maybe. You talk about gamesmanship. Why was he dressed out there for Kent State last week? You know, just wondering. And Brent Venables clearly looks a little, how can I say this gently? He looks annoyed that he's been asked so many questions about John Mateer, because this is a defensive minded guy who, I think in his core and his DNA, hates quarterbacks, I don't mean he hates John Mateer. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that he hates all the attention surrounding it, and he would rather talk about, hey, how are you going to dial up pressures against an offensive line that just allowed 6 sacks against Florida? Hey, what's it going to take to get Arch Manning flustered in his first Red River game? Like, what is that? That's more of what he would like to be talking about, as opposed to, hey, any update on this guy? Any update? Blah, blah, blah. It comes with the territory, man. I don't know what to tell you. Like, this is kind of the job that you signed up for when you agreed to be the coach at Oklahoma. Like, this is just reality. I'm not saying that Oklahoma thinks like this. I'm not saying that Brent Venables thinks like this, but this has turned into an extremely favorable outside perception game for Oklahoma, and here's why. If Oklahoma loses this game, Will, the selection committee that very much cares about quarterback health, as we know, is going to give OU some grace. They will.
I hate to say this, but truly, year to year, we don't even know that. Like, because there have been years where they've set precedents, and the next year they have turned it down. They might be like,
True.
You know what? Actually, we'll give you an upgrade if you have a hurt quarterback. Adversity.
Yeah, if you win this game, that is considered probably an upgrade for OU from that standpoint. You're graded on a curve, so to speak, if you've got your backup quarterback out there, or you're also graded against the curve if you're Florida State and you don't look the part with a backup quarterback. But if John Mateer is out there and he loses to Texas, oh, well, it was a miracle that he was even out there 17 days removed from the surgery. And what a miraculous thing it was just to see him recover this quickly and expedite his rehab, all those things. If Michael Hawkins Jr. loses to Texas, oh, well, he's a backup quarterback who lost 34-3 in this game last year. Yes, it would be the first time that Texas won consecutive Red River rivalry games since 08-09, and people would again be very much talking about the Longhorns being part of playoff contention. Have they figured things out? Did they turn the corner? Like that part would stink for Oklahoma, obviously. But if we just focus on the Oklahoma perception as far as how the rest of the sport views OU, really not all that bad in the 12-team playoff era. Really not all that bad. Nobody wants to lose a rivalry game or anything like that. Not diminishing any of that for OU fans. It would hurt. Of course it would. I am speaking on how they would be viewed by people who talk about this sport and by people who make decisions in this sport. Most importantly, the selection committee. That is the downside, your worst case scenario if you're Oklahoma in this one. But if Oklahoma wins, Will, if Oklahoma wins, buddy, that is a flex for Brent Venables unlike any that he has had. Even more than 2 years ago, because the current quarterback context matters. And it would be loss number 3 for an unranked Texas team who would enter the latter half of the season in search of its first power conference win. And honestly,
you know what? Okay, I would love to see the inside of an Oklahoma fan right now, because again, these guys hate each other. I mean, I'd put it right up there almost with the Iron Bowl in terms of like rivalries. That's why I immediately started respecting these two programs, because how much they hate each other and how they, talk about each other. And it's, you want to see your rival lose all the time, right? Like you want to see them struggle. You want to see them lost to Florida. But as Oklahoma, it's almost like this isn't even a quality win if we beat this team. They've beaten nobody,
It would still be considered probably a quality win, but isn't it so weird, though, how Florida just beat a top 10 team and did so at home? But if Oklahoma beats this team on a neutral site a week later, it's considered such a lesser win. Just
exactly. Like Texas would just be on the next year immediately if they lose this game. That's the unfortunate part is, we're not viewing them as the preseason number 1 team anymore. It's not this big thing. Like I could already see the narrative start to form of, oh, you got us last year, but that was a down year. We were rebuilding, And it's like, no, again, we have to grade you on your talent composite, what we thought. It's not our fault Arch Manning has not been a Manning this year,
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I'm not saying this will happen, because I've talked about how 9-3 at-large teams, look, we need to see it happen first before we actually assume that can be a realistic path for you. They do still have the Georgia game in Athens, which to me is more of a roadblock than a path to entry for the college football playoff. I don't even want to have these college football playoff conversations with Texas right now, just because they haven't looked the part and the number next to their team has not warranted that. It just hasn't. So obviously winning a game like this would change that. But, think about this, Will. This Oklahoma defense being the unit that allows Arch Manning, the Texas offense, to figure things out would be wild. Truly wild when you consider they're in the top 5, Oklahoma's defense, of all of these categories. Yards per play allowed, they're first in FBS. Tackles for loss per game, they're first. Opposing third down rate, first. Sacks per game, tied for first. Scoring defense, second. Passing yards per game allowed, second. Defensive stop rate that ESPN puts together, Max Olson does that column on a weekly basis. They're second in the country in that. Yards per pass allowed, they're tied for second there. Opposing red zone touchdown rate, they're third in the country there. Opposing quarterback rating, they're fourth. Rushing yards per carry allowed, they're fifth. Rushing yards per game allowed, they're fifth. That group is good. It's really good. And you could say, who have they played? They haven't played these teams that have figured it out yet. Texas hasn't figured it out either. So how different is Texas?
Scheduled the two kind of preeminent Big Ten powers, like sorry, Oregon, but historically it's Michigan and Ohio State. One of them had like the saddest performance ever, and the other one had a super fun one. And you know what? I'll say this. You talked about midseason. I think this is the official point in the season where stats count. Can we say that?
I agree with that. I agree because it can be so skewed the first like week 3 or week 4, and I'm always hesitant. Sometimes you can see a stat that's really eye-popping and throw it out for engagement and know in the back of your mind, water's probably going to find its level with this, and it's probably a little bit skewed. But we're at that point. We're at that point where we can actually take these numbers seriously. It is week 7. You've now played several, ideally at least 3 power conference games. Some teams I think have only played 2. Like Mississippi State's played 3. Yeah, I think you pretty much played 3 power conference games. Penn State's only played 2. How did those 2 games go?
Not well. They played them. They participated.
So yeah, I agree. Stats count at this point.
Yeah, I mean, and I will say that now this does sound like a little bit of narrative building, but the more I think about it, man, it almost feels like Oklahoma kind of broke Auburn, because if you look at how we were talking about Auburn at the time,
Texas has only played 2, by the way. Sorry, that was a dumb thing for me to omit. Texas had played 2, just like Penn State.
Yeah, they played. No, that's the thing is that same deal there. It's Penn State. It's like, well, they participated in an SEC game or 2. Anyway, so point being, I think I feel like that Auburn win, and again, we could talk about the penalty or the should be penalty. But I think that win will age worse than it was at the time. It's going to be hard for us to put ourselves back where we were at the time of that game, where like Auburn was on the rise, they were a ranked team and all that. But I think that, how about this? Brent Venables has understood defense every year of his coaching career. I think this is a very real defense, and I completely agree with you that if Arch Manning figures this out, it will be even more shocking than if Bryce Underwood had figured it out. And boy, howdy, didn't he?
Yeah, because there's a lot that Arch needs to figure out. Like, and especially with how bad their offensive line is, you just can't bank on getting the protection that you need for him to be able to work through his progressions and kind of operate the way that Steve Sarkisian, I think, envisioned him operating in this offense. Like, you can't run the ball either right now. I mean, Arch doesn't even have a 50-50 guy yet. Texas only has 4 contested catches this year, which is tied for Georgia for dead last in the SEC. That's not supposed to be who this Texas receiver room was. And I realize you lose Matthew Golden, you lose Isaiah Bond, you lose the ever underrated peanut butter in the back of the pantry, Gunnar Helm. Like, you lose a lot of these important guys, and you were expecting a DeAndre Moore. You were expecting Ryan Wingo. Ryan Wingo's figured things out the last couple of weeks, but DeAndre Moore spent the first part of the season banged up. Like, Livingstone has looked great in moments, but still, like, you just need to figure out who those guys are. And Texas just doesn't know where to turn on third down. And figuring that out on third down against this defense, it's just not typically the way that it happens. So I do think it would be a minor miracle if all of a sudden Texas is just like clicking on all cylinders, and it took Oklahoma to wake them up.
I mean, and I'll say too, like, I really don't blame the Texas receiving core there. Like, I feel like, I'm hearing, "Hi, I'm Ryan Wingo. Welcome to Jackass," every time there's a pass thrown to one of these Texas receivers. Like, why would you go up for a 50-50 ball in this offense? Truly, because he's like put the ball low and away, and the DB is like, "Can I even hit someone like this? It's not 2005 anymore. I feel like this is illegal." Like, that's the best thing that's protecting these receivers is guys going, "I got to pull up and not get targeting." And so, yeah, like, I'm sure Texas has talented receivers, but we're kind of at a point where it's like, hey, like, what is your incentive? It's not like where it was last year where it's like, hey, we clearly have goals. My quarterback's going to take care of me. It's like, if I fully just lay out for this pass that's 5 yards in front of me and get my head taken off, it's still fourth down. Why would I do that? So I'm not going to blame the receivers there. I think they just need to be in time. And something that we hit on after the Florida game and how Texas had kind of, I guess, devolved would be the word for what they've done, is that I thought their game plan was awesome against Ohio State. I was kind of in the minority there because of how the score and how the flow kind of worked out there. But I think they kind of showed everything as far as when your quarterback stinks, this is what we do. And I think they kind of put it all on tape to where Florida was like, you're not going to be able to do this same stuff against us because we'll be looking for it and we're going to make Arch beat us. And again, he looked better in that game, but it felt like that was their strategy and it worked to a T. And again, we talked about Brent Venables with his wry Grinch-like smile against Bryce Underwood. I feel the exact same way looking at Arch Manning of like, again, we got like the underrated 3-star transfer. They were going to fire me. Texas is the golden child of the SEC. They're changing rules for him. And he's looking across the sideline going, my quarterback's way better than yours right now. I'm about to make you feel it.
I'm interested how Texas tries to attack OU. I really am, because lost in the shuffle of that Auburn game, Cam Coleman was darn near unstoppable. He was great in that game. Now, Eli Bowen, all been the drum team member, love me some Eli Bowen. Expected to return for OU in this one after they haven't had him the first part of this season. Could be really important to be able to line up on Ryan Wingo on the outside and get some of those more favorable matchups that Auburn really did a good job of exploiting when Jackson Arnold was actually able to get rid of the football. So can Texas do some of that? Can Texas just find any sort of identity to be able to string chunk plays together? That's going to be the biggest question in this game for me. But just the context is always relevant. Well, it's always relevant. And I just want to go back to August and tell an Oklahoma fan. I wish I could go back on KREF and tell all my friends, that live and breathe this stuff for Oklahoma. Tell my guy Dari, hey, OU's going to have a chance to start 6-0 going into Red River. And Texas.
And by the way, let me take you back to exactly where you were. Sorry, I hate to cut you off, but that was when we were looking at Venmo transactions. That was the true bottom.
Yeah, right. It's like, just go back and tell them, hey, OU's going to have a chance to start 6-0, and Texas could potentially be 3-3 with a reeling offense. That would have been OU message board fantasy stuff right there, like just fan fiction. If somebody threw that out there and bold and brash to us or something like that, we would have said, all right, let's lay off the Boomer Kool-Aid right now. Okay, let's chill. But that is 60 minutes from happening, Will. It's not even that crazy. But I just can't envision that world. I can't shake the feeling that Texas continues the theme of this college football season so far. And that is, it is a week-to-week sport. And who you are the week before doesn't mean it's going to be who you are the week that you have coming up. This Texas team shows up tougher than it was last week, actually gets off blocks, realizes that, it wasn't just a bunch of self-induced mistakes and, you know what, they had nobody to blame for themselves. No. Comes out, plays harder against an Oklahoma team that will be desperate, maybe not quite as desperate as Florida was. Texas ends up being the tougher team in this game, finds a way to win 21-17.
So I hate to make it into like the just basic take here about, well, if the quarterback is healthy, I like this team, but if he's not, I don't.
It's big. It's big.
I mean, but they're just so different. I mean, let me ask you this question. What do you think about the potential of a Michael Hawkins statement game here? Is that on the table?
It's on the table. It's on the table because, look, 34-3 last year was rough. It was really, really rough. I think I would feel differently, and I just got done saying it's a week-to-week sport. Just because this is who you were last week doesn't mean it's who you are this week. But there's still the very realistic possibility that Texas defensively is struggling. And it is not necessarily the enforcer that it was last year in this game, wherein OU just had no chance. Now, he's got different surroundings. He's got Ben Arbuckle at his disposal. I don't want to look too much into the Kent State performance where they're basically playing against air. He's got different receivers. Deion Burks being out there healthy is kind of a move the chains guy. Like, there's just so much more working in Michael Hawkins' favor this year compared to last year when he's a true freshman, just swimming in the deep end in this game, a nearly impossible situation that played out. Like, they weren't going to win that game unless it was 14-10. I don't feel like it's plug and chug at quarterback for OU. Maybe OU fans don't want to hear that. I think John Mateer is a difference maker, and you've seen that play out in the first part of the season. So with all due respect to Michael Hawkins, who I give a lot of credit to, like I would not be expecting him to have a performance that makes us think, oh, Ben Arbuckle could just win with anybody back there. I've seen too much of a difference with the early returns on John Mateer.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And in terms of their style, right? If you look at how Florida was able to exploit this defense, it was on deep shots. We talked about that. And I think it comes down to, where are Michael Taft's eyes? Are they in the backfield looking at the quarterback, trying to stop him from running? Or are they downfield trying to get the, kind of cover the back end of the defense? The guy who leads this team in tackles, actually. And so I think if you're Ben Arbuckle, no matter what, you have to hit those deep shots. Like, you're not going to beat Texas going sideline to sideline, funny as it is, they've been practicing that stuff, I'm sure, for weeks because they didn't really trust their quarterback. You look at their game plans, they are very sideline to sideline. And so if Mateer doesn't play, send it, let it rip. Because what we can't see is like a cowardly performance, like a sad little, we got our backup quarterback, so we're just going to run power and
Right.
we're just going to do some option stuff. And you're playing with house money if you're OU and your quarterback doesn't play. And it would be super embarrassing to lose to this Texas team. I get that. But I think your chances of winning are such that I would rather the chance to win by, maybe you throw a bad pick and lose by 10, but you're trying. I'm starting to sound like the guy that was talking to James Franklin about the deep shots. Why don't you just try deep shots downfield?
Yeah,
it makes my skin crawl, right? It's like, but I think you're better off at least trying to hit those deep shots, because the more these linebackers can kind of not worry about that, the more they can pin their ears back and just look at the quarterback, the less effective a quarterback like Hawkins can be when he's trying to play within himself. So I think out of the gate, we got to see shot plays. We got to see some creativity of Ben Arbuckle, and say what you will about him, but he's creative. And so that's the thing. I think this is going to be a real statement game for Arbuckle, right? Because he knows what he has, and he's like the only person in America that knows exactly what Oklahoma has right now. And so hopefully it will take Texas, from his standpoint, a quarter or two to figure that out. PK is no slouch either, but they're going to try some stuff, I'm sure, that they haven't seen in film, and I think we'll be able to kind of tell early, like, are they taking those chances? Are they confusing the Texas defense, or are they just kind of surrender cobraing if Hawkins is out there? I'm not going to rule out Mateer playing, obviously, and that changes everything. But either way, Mateer's the same way. You can protect him by taking those deep shots, because, like I said, it just comes down to, you don't want Michael Taft coming downhill at your backfield. I'll put it to you like that.
I agree with that. And I honestly think the emergence of Dallas Wilson in his first college game changed how Texas wanted to defend Florida. I think that if you look at what they had to account for on the back end that they were not necessarily expecting, it was all of a sudden like they were on their heels. And Steve Sarkisian talked about it afterwards, how they just didn't have that pass rush mindset. Well, that's because they're sitting there and they're dropping in coverage. And even when they were trying to account for the over the top safety and they hit that shot to him on the right side, you're like, man, he's just kind of changing what you can do to stretch the field with a Florida offense that had done none of that in the first part of the year. And so all of a sudden you're like scrambling, trying to figure that out. So if you're Oklahoma, yes, I agree. Michael Hawkins can throw a deep ball. You didn't have really guys that could get separation and warrant that as much last year. It was the JJ Hester play that they had in the Auburn game where they finally attacked downfield. It's not going to be obviously a frequent part of this game, but he has the ability to dial it up. And if Texas is unable to get pressure with that front seven, which is kind of inexplicable that they struggled so much last week with that, then buddy, you better take those chances if they're going to give you that opportunity. So yeah, this is going to be a really, really interesting chess match that you could be having such different conversations on Sunday based on who plays quarterback for Oklahoma. And that's what I've gotten to. And I kind of wish we were recording this pod on Friday. Maybe we won't even know on Friday who's starting a quarterback for OU.
Yeah, and I'll say too, man, like, I think no matter who starts at quarterback, unfortunately, that quarterback is going to need to be involved in the run game. I mean, because John Mateer still has the second highest rushing yards. So even if he comes out there and he's hurt, you can't play him like DJ Lagway. You don't have Jaden Ball. As funny as that is to say out loud, like, you don't even really at this point have a running back that you could go, let's go ride this guy based on what you've seen, especially against this defense, right? And so that's kind of the other part of it too, is that, even if Mateer is healthy, you're not exactly out of the woods from that standpoint, because we know, he obviously is, he's still looking at, 6 touchdowns, 3 picks. So it's not like he's dissecting defenses. I know he's been a lot of 20-20 and they kind of score their touchdowns a little bit differently. But that being said, like, they're moving the ball. I'm not saying they're not. But again, a lot of his game is at least moving the pocket, at least, just having the threat of a run. So it's kind of like flipped. It's like with Michael Hawkins, you need the deep shots. With Mateer, you got to let him know that you're not scared to run the ball with him, because if they treat him like a sitting duck, I don't think he has the arm strength in the way that Lagway does to be able to just consistently throw these trebuchet shots downfield. So I think either way, you have a very interesting challenge if you're their offense. I'm actually, the more I think about this, the more I'm really fascinated by this game.
And worth noting, agree with you, quarterback run game has to be a big part of this. Jaden Ott finally got double-digit touches last week after, let's call it just a weird start. A weird start to his time at Oklahoma. And I think a first month that left a lot of people scratching their heads. So that was a welcome sight to see coming out of that game, because they need to find these options. They were able to get him post-spring in hopes that he'd be able to show up in a game like this. And I've talked a lot about the non-material rushing options that need to be there for OU. I would agree. I think that whether it's Mateer or whoever's in the backfield lining up Blaylock as well, like, you need to be able to get these options going. I think we get an awesome game. I hope we get an awesome game. I love that there's some drama building up to this. I love that these two teams are in very different places than what we would have expected coming into the season. Although I kind of looked back at my crystal ball and I was like, oh yeah, I had OU undefeated going into this game. That's not really saying a whole lot, considering their one true road game so far was at Temple, mighty Temple. But yeah, this one should be really, really good. Cannot wait for this on Saturday afternoon. All right, well, Arkansas, number 12, Tennessee. Tennessee's a 12.5-point favorite. The over-under I have is 1.5 Bobby Petrino outbursts at officials. Got to have one. Would like to have two. Really would like to have two. And I'm not talking like flag-induced, because if we're getting two of those, Lord have mercy. I mean, you know what I mean, though. Just the type of sequence where he calls the officials over simply to blast them. He MFs them as they're walking away and they turn their back on him. Just we're getting that.
Have we seen a coach throw it out of a college football game, baseball style? Because we got to put a tracker for Petrino, especially if he knows he's not going to get the job. Like, kind of later in the season, he might just get his money's worth, quote unquote.
The Bobby Cox of college football. That is Bobby Petrino.
You got to give my guys a chance, dude. It's the first quarter. You just want to be back on the sideline. This has nothing to do with me.
Dude, what do you mean you called for a timeout? You yelled that 30 yards away from the official. Come on, get out of here, Bobby. But yeah, just hostile atmosphere in which, he might not get all the calls. He knows the stakes for his team. More specifically, he knows the stakes for himself as the interim Dwight Schrute assistant regional manager. He admitted this week that he went up to the booth initially as a coordinator so that he would stop ripping officials. It's incredible.
Just like me, for real. That's so funny. They had to put a muzzle on him. They were like, "No, down, Bobby."
You could hear him through the class. Like, what's that sound of him here from up there? Oh yeah,
refs look up. He's just staring at them. He's just.
Like Sam Pittman, like holding up his headset to the official just so that he can hear Bobby just rip him. Interim Robert Patrick needs to embrace that in every way. If he shows up in like a date Mike bandana, just hand him the job, €100 check. If he wins this game, hand him the job. Not really, but maybe. Fun fact, Vols haven't beaten Arkansas since 2007. The George W. Bush administration we're talking about here. 4 straight Arkansas wins in this rivalry, including last year in Fayetteville. Trivia question for you, Will. What job did Bobby Petrino have when Tennessee last beat Arkansas in 2007? Don't search this. Don't cheat.
2007? Oh, gosh. Where did he come from? I actually don't know that.
So you were right. Where did he come from? That's the key part in this. And if you could figure that part, came from the Falcons. Quit on the Falcons midseason.
Oh my gosh, he sure did leave the Falcons after all the let's call it quarterback controversy. Duh. Everyone's screaming at their like radios here, but like that feels like 8 lifetimes ago. That truly feels like it happened in my parents' childhood.
Sometimes it is fun to just pick a moment in time and think about what was Bobby Petrino doing at this moment of time? Which one of his various jobs was he doing? And coaching the Atlanta Falcons, he was actually in the midst of a winning streak, his only winning streak that he got there. He won like 3 games, and this was part of this was in between a 2-game winning streak that he had, this very specific moment wherein Tennessee beat Arkansas. There was a part of me that can see Arkansas shocking the world, because as UCLA reminded us, as I was just talking about with Texas and Oklahoma, it is a week to week league, but there is interim energy that can sometimes be the best energy, especially when your interim coach comes in and just guts the defensive staff. We respect Travis Williams. The job that Travis Williams was doing so far this year, let's just say it's not making the resume anytime soon.
Not great. He's like, I'm still here. Y'all fired him, and I'm still cool. Y'all need other coaches y'all can get. Y'all want me to like carry pads?
Yeah, Travis Williams is gone. Basically, the entire defensive staff for Arkansas is gone. And I looked up their DC, and he was like coaching the UFL, coaching Houston as the DC. Like, I think that was his last time calling plays. So, yeah, don't really feel great about that, especially against a Josh Heupel offense. Which, look, I'm just saying, they can light up a scoreboard. That much we know. That should be extremely difficult for Arkansas to stop, especially with how well Tennessee can run the ball. I might be too low on Tennessee's offense in this game, and I'm just keeping the possibility of interim energy. That's the only reason I don't have Tennessee scoring 60 points in this one. I'll take Tennessee 45-24. The over-under for this game, Will, is 68.5. That's so
I
high.
I believe it. And I mean, this truly is kind of a nightmare matchup. Actually, I'm going to say not for Tennessee, but for Arkansas, because this is just not the team you want to play if you have interim energy. You
Yep.
pretty much have a quarterback on the other side who has interim head coach energy. And I think, I would say right now we are pushing towards two archetypes of like offensive guy, right? Like you kind of have like the more, I hate to say like nerdy, a guy that would align with myself. I'll put it to you like that, like a Josh Heupel, a Levy, some of these guys that are off of like the Leech tree where they're more of like the, it feels like they're kind of like spreadsheet guys. Like they're really like find joy. Like I can imagine these guys just joyful, drawing up plays. And then you kind of have like the young, like tech fit, like Mike McDaniel, Ben Arbuckle, McVay guy. And with Petrino, he's a true dadgummit guy. He's kind of one of the last. I think Drink is a dadgummit guy. But in terms of like offensive guys, but I think that like for Josh Heupel and the way his offense can get up and down, and how bad this defense has been, and to your point, like whole defensive staff is gone. So I think like in previous years, especially like honestly, even last year, I'd be very worried about this Tennessee team playing this Arkansas team. I mean, they lost obviously this game last year. But point being, like, I think that this Tennessee team uniquely has an ability to punch back in a way that has other Tennessee teams, almost every other Tennessee team, I would argue, has struggled with. Even the Hendon Hooker teams kind of got punched in the mouth. And yeah, they had runs late, in some of these bigger games, but they just couldn't kind of get back on the horse when they fell off. And so I would imagine some of the most creative, wild Taylor Green plays to start this game, but you can only have so many of those. And boy, howdy, does Josh Heupel know that, and again, we've sung the praises of their defense over the years. It's kind of an underrated part of Tennessee. I don't think it's underrated at this point, but I really do think that's the difference. Whereas Arkansas had a defense that when they had their initial plan still kind of wasn't working. And now, again, it just comes down to how many coaches are left on the staff. That's why I made that joke is like, hey, how many guys do we have when we clean house and we have Bobby Petrino in here to like run drills and like keep, like the things that keep a football team going. It's so underrated how many parts of a football team there are. And so when you have guys that aren't really comfortable and you're trying to prepare for an offense like this, I just think it's a nightmare. Like I want to have the date Mike kind of like, oh, like bang, how do you like me now? Bobby's back, but I think we're gonna have to wait a week. I think this is gonna be a blowout for Tennessee, man.
Yeah, there's a tough team to watch when you don't feel like trying as much defensively. And let's just call it what it is, Arkansas. That Notre Dame game, your defense did not feel like trying. Okay. And the last thing you probably want to see is a team that operates with tempo like Tennessee does. And knowing, man, I'm going to be so gassed in the effort level. Now, if Arkansas comes out early on and they handle the tempo and they look like they have different energy and they look like a team that's playing inspired, maybe playing for themselves in the portal or something like that, because let's not dismiss that. Like there is something to be playing for at all times. Even if your season is lost, you're trying to get that next contract, which that's what these are at these points. Like you're still trying to put out good film. And if that type of Arkansas defense shows up, even if it is, not necessarily for the name on the front, it's more for the name on the back, then I think we'll know early on. But there's just a tough thing to shake when you see a defensive performance as bad as what Arkansas was against Notre Dame. I realize a bye week in between. Maybe they're a little bit more rested, but if we see hands on hips like early in the second quarter on that Arkansas defense, get out the record books. This one can get really ugly, real ugly.
When Taylor Swift had talked about the asylum that I was raised in, bye week Bobby Petrino, interim head coach, is like the scariest. Like, you could get so many state secrets out of me if you put me on that team. Where it's like, hey, to your point, exactly. It's like he's not even a defensive guy, but I know he's mad at this defense for quitting because every coach, every leader hates to see that. Even if the coaches failed you, to your point, like, you signed a contract at this point. Let's call it what it is. Like, Taylor Green was up in Boise. Like it's not like these are all like homegrown Arkansas kids. They came together for a shared goal to win SEC football games, and they haven't been doing that. And especially for Bobby on the offensive side, it's like, yeah, we've had some struggles, we had some bad turnovers, we get that, but like we talked about, the offense is not why they were losing games. And so I feel so bad for the guys that like are on that defense. I mean, some of it's deserved, right? But it's like the guys that stick around, it's almost like you're going to get the brunt of this, because I'm sure we have a little bit of quiet quitting. I'm sure we have like some calls to people like, hey, what are you seeing over there? Hey, my buddy's on this team. Let's see if he can get you taken care of, especially over a bye week. So I think this is going to be very like, this next stretch is going to be so critical for Arkansas's future. And none of this is be all end all, right? Because we've seen teams turn things around. We've seen entire rosters quit and teams reload. But this version of Arkansas, the Sam Pittman kind of blueprint, they only have a couple of games to convince these guys to stay on board. I think you're right there. So I think this team will show some fight. I'll give it to you like this. They might make some dumb plays. They probably will make some dumb plays. But if we get to the end of 60 minutes and we see that level of quit, Bobby Petrino's head is going to be on the floor. So he's going to die. They're going to have to carry him out of the stadium if we see that again.
I think if you're searching for reasons for optimism for Arkansas, and I'm pretty sure this is still accurate. I haven't checked in on this, but I know it was, at least in the first couple of days after they made this move, maybe in the first week after they made this move, no players announced their intentions to get into the portal. That will inevitably change at season's end, but we're seeing mid-season announcements with teams that have fired coaches. And honestly, like, you could say like you're quitting on your team. Well, your administration is quitting on your team already. So I don't want to hear that from other people. But we haven't seen those announcements from Arkansas. So maybe, just maybe, they can tap into some of that mindset and there is a little bit more life. But even if you told me we're going to get the best version of Arkansas, I'd still say Tennessee's offense is probably going to find a way to score a lot of points in this one. All right, well, Florida. Number 5, Texas A&M. Texas A&M, 7.5-point favorites. The over-under I have is 1 Florida touchdown. 2 road games for Florida so far. 1 touchdown apiece. 2 home games for A&M so far. 1 touchdown allowed apiece in those games. Location matters in this one in a pretty big way. I brought up 2 things a lot so far, so I'm going to repeat it, and then we'll get into some other things that kind of speak to why these numbers are important. One is that Billy Napier is 5-15 in games away from the swamp since he took over Florida. Not great. The other is that Mike Elko has not lost at home to an unranked team since Drake May had a touchdown pass with 16 seconds left back in 2022 when Elko was in year 1 at Duke.
Hey, watch out. Don't say that. Belichick's goons are going to come for you if you start talking about Drake May.
They're going to bleep out what I just said, a negative stat that happened before he was there and even realized that UNC existed. Yeah.
Mark Wahlberg is at your door right now, brother.
Is Mark Wahlberg part of this?
He's just very Bostonian. I would imagine that's who his goons are, Belichick.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense. Maybe more so Donnie than Mark. I don't know that Mark fits in the goon category anymore. Yeah. Elko, during his 3.5 seasons as an FBS head coach, is 17-1 at home against unranked teams. That includes his time at Duke. Napier, during his 3.5 seasons as Florida's coach, is 0-13 away from the swamp against AP top 25 teams. Again, that is away from the swamp, so that is including neutral site games. Lifetime, so include his time at Louisiana. He is 1-17 in those spots, with his lone win against an AP top 25 team away from home coming in 2020, the season opener, when Louisiana went into Iowa State and played in front of 0 fans and beat number 23 Cyclones. Yeah. Let's focus on the Florida piece of this. Those 5 wins away from the swamp that Billy Napier has at Florida 2022 at Texas A&M, who finished 5-7. 2023 at South Carolina, who finished 5-7. 2024 at Mississippi State, who finished 2-10. 2024 at Florida State, who finished 2-10. 2024 against Tulane in the Gasparilla Bowl, Tulane finished 9-5. They're also playing with a backup quarterback in that game as well.
Hold on. So that I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but at the time I was like, this game is a joke. I joked about like Marco Rubio's son getting it, but that like on paper, like if Tulane tried, would be his biggest win, kind of away from home. That's crazy.
Away from home, yes. If Darian Mensah was starting in that game, different story. Ty Thompson was not it. No offense, Ty Thompson, but yeah. I think we all kind of looked at that matchup wherein DJ Lagway didn't even look particularly good, and Florida still won that game running away with it. And they were just overmatching everything Tulane was doing on offense. Billy Napier at Florida, has not beat a power conference bowl team away from the swamp. We can agree that
with so many chances. I'm sorry. All of these stats are blowing my mind. I hate to keep cutting you off, but I am truly processing this in real time and going, oh my gosh, that actually lines up with what we've seen. That's crazy.
A&M is 5-0. I think we agree. A&M's going to make a bowl game, Will. They will get there. They're going to find a way. The other thing worth mentioning, in those 5 wins that Billy Napier has away from the swamp, the win at Florida State last year was the first and only one that happened at night. Billy Napier has 1 night win away from the swamp as the head coach at Florida. What time is this one kicking off? 6 p.m. local time in front of 108,000 people at Kyle Field. History's not on Florida's side, okay? And I realize recent history is good with how Florida looked last week against Texas. This is where the self-induced mistakes typically pop up for Florida with the pre-snap infractions, special teams blunders, game management issues. They all seem to happen on the road. They happen as well in the USF game, but mostly they happen on the road. It is hard to think when you're a play caller and you've got all these decisions to make in a hostile atmosphere. Steve Sarkisian found that out all too well last week in the swamp. It would be a nice feather in A&M's cap if it could beat Florida a week removed from Texas getting beat basically in every phase by Florida. Also, if I'm speculating, might mean a little bit to that Texas A&M coaching staff to make it a long night for DJ Lagway. They whiffed on recruiting him while he was in high school. They might have whiffed on recruiting him again after he was already at Florida.
They whiffed on recruiting him so far.
Correct. Will they whiff on recruiting him a third time? We'll see. It's the old Ryan Grubb Alabama thing. Maybe third time's a charm. We'll see. A&M hasn't put it all together for a game yet. They haven't. Yet they're number 5 in the country. They're 5-0. They're feeling good. I don't think that it's a totally complete game because Florida's play in the trenches. I do think that's going to translate. I do think they will be able to take some of that on the road. But a multi-interception game from DJ Lagway proves to be costly. He sees more pressure in this game, Cassius Howell, than he did in that Texas game. I'm going to take A&M to win this one 24-14.
So let's talk about Marcel Reed versus that Florida defense. Because I think if you're Florida, that's kind of the thing that you would say, okay, I have some, I hate to say hopium, but it's like, this is where I feel the strongest, right? So based on the success of their game plan, again, not just against Texas, but certainly against LSU, who might have tackled themselves a bit, but in a couple of these games this year, like the defense has not been the problem at Florida. How do you think that a good game plan looks for Florida?
For Florida defensively against Marcel Reed, I think you would ideally like to force them to be in 3rd and longs wherein they can't have that offensive bounce. A&M can beat you in a lot of ways. If you're getting into 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, you're in trouble. That's where Marcel Reed can pick you apart. I think ideally you would say, we'll keep him in the pocket. Those spots under pressure are typically where he struggled. It doesn't mean he always struggles against the blitz because that A&M offensive line has been pretty good at protecting him. He's been pretty good at getting rid of the football. But ideally, that's how it would play out. That's a very probably basic way to answer that. But if I'm Florida, I'm really trying to limit the quarterback run game. I don't want him to kind of get going with his legs. He is a rhythm quarterback. Once he gets those drives going, like it feels very hard to stop. Now he's gotten off to 2 slow starts in SEC play, and you've kind of been like, man, when's Marcel Reed going to kind of figure it out? And then once he starts getting 3-4 completions in a row, it's like, oh, dang. You saw that Notre Dame defense that was totally on its heels at points in that game and felt like Marcel Reed was just totally dialed in. He is a rhythm quarterback still at this stage of his career.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to, do you trust your DBs in one-on-one against what might be the two best receivers in the SEC, right? At
Two of
A&M.
the top 3 in receiving right now in the SEC. Yeah.
Yeah, hard to argue at that point. I mean, and again, everything is always the funniest possible outcome. Cormani McClain has been actually kind of like a really bright spot for Florida this year. So that's one matchup where you kind of go, okay, strength on strength. It's about getting that second guy that you feel like, and I think that's why A&M is so scary. It's that you have to pick your poison. You can't just sit back in coverage and go, okay, like we're going to make Marcel Reed beat us with his arm. No, they would love that. They would, again, watch this guy smoke my team throwing 2 passes. I mean, just belt to butt, smoke my team because LSU could not stop him sideline to sideline. And so I almost feel like with Florida, you would kind of rather maybe sit back a little bit and trust your guys and just hope for the mistake. I think with A&M, like I said, their biggest opponent has been themselves at times. I think it's funny we talked about the Mizzou, like worst case, like botched PAT because A&M already won that game, right? It feels like their opponents have done something successfully against them, but you could really say most of the time it's like, hey, if A&M could just tighten some stuff up, they're actually even better than they've showed on paper. Again, final score last week against Mississippi State didn't really like indicate how that game went down. But it kind of showed when they started clicking what they could look like. I think this really, like I said, comes down to the Florida defense and schematically what they do, because it's hard to say this, but I would really just put their defense about, I'd say like top 4 or 5 in the SEC, because the thing is, we saw this a couple weeks ago at Ole Miss with LSU. It's like if your defense is good, they can only be on the field for so long. That's just how life works. And I think that's when you factor that in how Florida's defense is played, same thing, with Miami, where it's like at the end of the game, you just kind of give up. And so this is definitely a team in A&M that is built to kind of lean on you and even overcome some of those mistakes. This could be a very turnover happy game. We got to see more of this DJ Lagway, right? Even if he's, auditioning for his future or wherever else. I think that just for the sake of the game, these are 2 quarterbacks that are electric, fun players. And I think if you're Billy, you're playing with house money. It would be actually the funniest outcome would be him winning this game for sure. Because imagine how that would affect Texas, right? Like imagine Texas loses to Oklahoma and then they look across the aisle and it's like, oh wait, A&M just like smoked Florida. Now who are we? Like that would be the funniest outcome, where in 3 weeks you go from like the best team in the country or like preseason number 1. Oh, we had a loss to Ohio State, but it's Ohio State, to like, wow, we are trash, dog. Like we are actually like one of the worst teams, So as funny as that would be, I really do think A&M can start to lean on them. And just like Mississippi State, it's going to be a really strong, proud defense that kind of can't get out of, or the offense can't get out of its way. And the final score does not indicate the game flow, but I think the final score will be lopsided in A&M's favor.
Yeah, what does it look like in the fourth quarter? Does it look like Florida is running out of gas, consecutive physical games? And to be fair, Florida was mostly bringing the physicality to the table in that Texas game. But what does it look like when you realize, oh man, A&M's got 3 different ways to run the football. They feel like they have these receivers that you just have to account for on the back end, so you can't load the box against them. They're just a tough team to defend against for 60 minutes. And it doesn't mean that they look the part start to finish, but they have been able to kind of find these ways and tap into it. And obviously, like if we see A&M lose this game, we'll play the results and say, you know what, they were kind of playing with fire a little bit with some of these close games that they've been involved in, and maybe they were going to get bit in one of these, in Florida just kind of playing with house money, backs against the wall. Billy Napier's, about to get fired, and this is when his team plays its absolute best. Like that possibility is still open. We could be talking about that on Sunday, but man, Florida's going to have to correct a lot of the things that have plagued them away from the swamp. And that will really show me if they're able to win in an atmosphere like this. Okay, then I'm willing to start having the conversations of, did Florida actually figure some of these things out during the bye week? And also, if DJ Lagway is limping in the first quarter of this one, there's still going to be that but the rest of the way. And I probably wouldn't be surprised at this point if we saw that play out again.
Look, limping DJ Lagway is one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC. Give me Darth Lagway over anybody, okay? Like I said, when they take away his legs, he's a way better player. I think that the offensive line, they're like Spartans when he's hurt. So if I'm DJ Lagway, I'm faking a limp. I'm going, oh guys, please hold this pocket, or I'm gonna go down, please.
When DJ Lagway's NFL draft discussions are happening, somebody will look back on his career and go, wait a minute, that guy beat Jackson Dart when he was dealing with a hamstring injury. He beat Arch Manning when he's limping in the first quarter of that game. He's basically playing on one leg. Just saying, they'll throw these things out there. Maybe you just, again, roll him out in a wheelchair and just see how well Florida's offensive line protects him. But they won't let him get touched. Clean uniform by the end of the game. All right. Can't wait for this one. Number 10, Georgia, 3.5-point favorites against Auburn. The over-under I have is 11.3 Auburn points. Very specific. That is what Auburn has averaged during this 8-game losing streak to Georgia in the Deep South's oldest rivalry. Have not exceeded 20 points during that losing streak. Yuck. Hugh Freeze is actually the only coach that Auburn has had during that losing streak to hit 15 points. And I can say only coach during that streak because when you've had 3 different coaches during that losing streak, these are the types of things you can reference. It was the 2023 game at Jordan-Hare wherein Brock Bowers reminded us he is the best tight end in the history of this sport. Brock Bowers ain't walking through that door, though. And that's a little bit tough to stomach if you're a Georgia fan. The question is if vintage Jordan-Hare magic is walking through that door. It has not produced a win against Georgia or Alabama in the 2020s. In fact, Auburn's only Jordan-Hare win against a top 10 team in the 2020s was the 2021 Ole Miss game when Matt Corral got hurt. They were probably still going to win that game even if he stayed healthy. They were doing really well against him early on, but you get what I'm saying. Diego Pavia has more wins at Jordan-Hare than Jordan-Hare has magical wins against top 10 teams in the 2020s.
Yeah. It's
tough.
getting sad, man. Growing up in Auburn, I think that's probably the biggest slide in the SEC because, some of the teams have been up and down or whatever. But growing up, Auburn was just such a tough out, such a sound team. Even under Gus, Gus's defenses are so underrated too over the years where they just had these
Kevin Steele's defenses. Yeah.
Yeah, right. No, facts. And but point being, they were just known to be just a sound team that blocked well, that tackled well, and it's all that has gone out the window, and they've almost kind of become a finesse team, which is just weird to see.
Well, post Gus Malzahn era at Jordan-Hare, Auburn's record against power conference teams is 5-13. 5-13. Yeah, Jordan-Hare magic,
rough, man. I hate that.
It's no longer this inevitable thing. 2010s, inevitable. Bank on it. It's going to show up several times over the course of the year. I think now we're looking at it going maybe once a year. Last year was the A&M game, but the drop pass in 4 overtimes. That was the time. And A&M even came back in that game after it looked like Auburn was just going to dominate from start to finish. But it's just no longer this thing that you can bank on. But I do think, at least for part of this game, we're going to say, buddy, Jordan-Hare magic, it is back. I think Auburn comes out firing in this game. I think Georgia falls behind by double digits in the first half for the 3rd time in 4 SEC games. Jackson Arnold looks comfortable. He's not seeing much of a pass rush. We've talked about how that's been an issue for Georgia in the first part of the season. Cam Coleman is winning battles on the outside against overmatched Georgia corners. I think Auburn is up 17-3, and we're all going, man, this is one of those nights. Wow. How do you like this? But Georgia, it's already had to come back and kind of not panic in these games where then they've fallen behind early. I think there's no panic from Gunnar Stockton and that Georgia offense, who looks like it has kind of found something with Chauncey Bowens, who has emerged as essentially the go-to back. He's averaged 15 scrimmage touches in their first 3 SEC games. And I think they have found wow, we might actually have a true ground game identity that we can lean on. They start going tempo in the second half. The bad version of Jackson Arnold shows up at a costly time with a couple of errant throws that are picked off. Georgia wins a wild game, 27-24.
It's interesting that you started this talking about Brock Bowers and how he's not walking through this door, because one of the points I was going to make about this game is man, they're hiding Oscar Delp, huh? You saw that play against Kentucky, right?
He's pretty athletic, man. He's pretty darn good. I don't like comparing anybody to Brock Bowers, but some of the things that he can do in space, you're just how are they not finding more ways to get this guy the football?
Yeah, and it's, again, same here. I'm not comparing those two players, but I can't believe I'm sitting here looking at Georgia going, their offense has actually been better than I expected this year. They're good. They just need to target the tight end more. that is like the most insane thing to say about a Mike Bobo offense. And again, I'm sure Georgia fans would go, "Oh, well, what do you like? You are never going to be happy." And I get that because that was a lot of my criticism over the first couple of years of Bobo is like they're taking these like tight end screens, they're taking this easy stuff over the middle. They need to get outside, and that's what this offense has been, more like the outside stuff, and at least like kind of the checkdowns have gone to the running backs more. And so point being, like I actually just want to shout out Oscar Delp, and it feels like we've been like kind of waiting to see this guy for years. We saw it against Kentucky. He has 4 catches on the year. Like I said, he's a 5th in receptions, and there's kind of a tier break between the 4 receivers and him. So I would say look for Oscar Delp to kind of actually have that game on the road at Jordan-Hare, because you can kind of find those, and especially if Auburn goes on this run that you're talking about to stabilize things. I think they showed a little bit of like what he can be in that Kentucky game with his single catch, for a ton of yards. So, but yeah, that being said, it's just hard. I'm right there with you, man. I know I've said this before, but I thought when Hugh Freeze was hired, the last thing I was going to be able to say is this team was boring. And maybe it's not. Like I was talking about off air, he had this crazy quote this week talking about like one of his offensive linemen like really can't hear snap counts. Like Auburn's still not normal. Like don't get me wrong, but they're not weird in a way that makes me want to like root for them or believe in them. They're just weird. Like it's just like, okay, that guy's at the party talking about his weird surgery or whatever again. It's like, bro, like you gotta like have, again, we talked about it, and identity. So I think that against a Georgia team that we've kind of hit on has like struggled to get after the passer. Auburn, buddy, I mean, they're just giving out sacks. I think
Nobody's allowed more in the country than Auburn this year, and Jackson Arnold a big part of that. The protection has not been particularly good, but like if you're going to get after a quarterback, would have thought Cutter Boley would have been the guy. Jackson Arnold, like you've got 2 prime opportunities, albeit in a hostile atmosphere, to be able to do that.
Yeah, and we said this last week about Cutter Bully, and I was almost like, don't even take it seriously when they have a big sack number. And if you look at like I believe they only had 1 sack last week, right?
They had 2. I think they had 2, but there was it was essentially 1 in the first 3 quarters while it was kind of competitive.
Yeah, like one, I guess, like real game, non-garbage time sack.
Right.
And I remember it was kind of like a coverage sack. Like it wasn't like a guy made an awesome play. It was like, I guess there's a sack. And so point being, to your point, like you have 2 guys in a row that are perfect to really like pin your ears back, get after a quarterback. Jackson Arnold will manufacture a sack here and there. So I think this is the game that we start to see a little bit of Georgia. I don't know how real it will be after that, after you see these 2 guys. But yeah, I have 0 reason to believe. I'm with you. Like I could see a good game script. I could see this like the place is rocking, but it just feels like the story always ends the same way. And I wish I had a supercut kind of myself as I've been doing this, within the context of they haven't had that big win. Like you were just talking about me going, I don't know, man, Jordan-Hare started to win there. Jordan-Hare magic, feeling it this week. It's been wrong almost every time outside of the A&M game. So I'm not going to sit here and go, Kirby's smart. They're going to sneak up on him. I think this is going to be, I don't think Georgia really has those, like kind of like when they were in the middle of the back-to-back and they were just smoking teams. Again, I attended one of these that my team played, and it was an SEC championship game where they were just running fun plays because they were just like, I don't even want to show any good plays because we're beating you guys so bad with Todd Bunkin. They don't really have that as much in their game anymore. So I think it'll still be a grindy game, especially against a ball control team like Auburn. But at the same time, like we have no faith that Auburn can even get first downs right now. So it might just be a laugher. So I think either way, either Auburn could start hot and Georgia could come back, or Georgia could just be hot throughout. But it's really hard for me to see this one.
Yeah, it's I think if you're Hugh Freeze, it's awfully tempting to look at the potential mismatch you have with your wide receivers and against a Georgia secondary that struggled against Tennessee. Chris Brazzell was getting his in that game. And if you think you could do that with Cam Coleman, you're telling Jackson Arnold, look, they're struggling to have a pass rush. You need to cut it loose. You need to be able to attack downfield. We need chunk plays against this team. We're not going to assume that we're going to be able to have all these methodical drives, that last 60 minutes. Like we're going to need to be able to hit on some of these home run plays. And that's going to be a really interesting thing to kind of dissect, because we always criticize Hugh Freeze forgetting about his running backs in key moments. And he might think there are opportunities to be had in the passing game, chunk plays here or there. And he's right. Like those opportunities are there. In my opinion, if you're Auburn, you still need to be able to lean on those backs. You still need to understand that if Jackson Arnold is ending this game with like 15 rushing attempts and he's running for his life too much of the time, then you're probably not playing to your strengths as much as you should be. All right, well, one that you're going to be heavily invested in, South Carolina, number 11 LSU. LSU is a 9.5-point favorite. A lot of line movement on this one. The over-under I have is 18 Garrett Nussmeier passing yards coming on throws outside the numbers and 10 yards past the line of scrimmage. That is specific for a reason. That is what he is averaging per game this year compared to 80 last year. Basically 1.5 completions per game in those areas this year, nearly 4 per game last year. He is 7 for 23 for 90 yards through 5 games on those throws. That is 10 yards beyond the line of scrimmage and outside the numbers. Just for a little perspective on what that means, that's 7 for 23 for 90 yards. This year, a very limited DJ Lagway on those throws is 11 for 24, but for 247 yards, 213 of which are on the right side of the field compared to 37 going to the left side of the field, 10 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. I tend to think, and maybe
all of those misses went to LSU DBs.
There's a lot of them that did, definitely. I tend to think, Will, that the hardest throws for a quarterback to make are left side, at least 10 yards past the line of scrimmage. If you're turning on someone's NFL draft reel or something like that, those are a lot of the throws that they're making to show that they're next level. And if they're layering those throws, beyond the outstretched arms of a linebacker or somebody in coverage, like those are the types of throws you're seeing them make on a repeated basis. You are also most susceptible to big hits when you're trying to make those throws. If you are trying to play through an injury, you're just not going to want to target that area of the field that much. DJ Lagway on those throws, 10 yards beyond the line of scrimmage, left side of the field, 2 for 11, 34 yards. Garrett Nussmeier on those throws, 3 for 8 for 47 yards. That's it. Now you can probably say, well, that's because teams are playing drop 8 coverage against LSU because they're not even trying to run the ball. They're instead trying to pass, and to do so without the entire field available. That explains essentially why this LSU offense has been really easy for teams to defend. I found those numbers on PFF, and I texted you about this right afterwards because in addition to my eyeballs telling me the obvious, what everybody can see watching Garrett Nussmeier, which is something is clearly wrong, I wanted something beyond the raw passing numbers that reflected a guy who just does not look right yet. And I don't know if he ever will look right this season. Brian Kelly seems to think so. But if you are looking for something in this game that tells you, hey, Garrett Nussmeier is actually looking healthier coming off the bye, that's the area of the field to focus on because he can still make those throws to the middle of the field. And even downfield, he can do that. But outside the numbers is where he really has to push things. And that's been a challenge so far for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's evident, right? And this is the moments that you really are, I guess, a little bit more hesitant to have Brian Kelly as your head coach because we talked about it in the offseason. Literally, we said this, and like LSU fans were like, that's ridiculous. That sounds like a wild thing to say. The thing stopping LSU from a championship mostly is just Brian Kelly at the podium because he finds a way to just say the strangest thing you've ever seen. Whenever Nussmeier is like clearly dealing with something, all he has to say is like, yeah, obviously he's not right because our eyes see it. But when he doesn't acknowledge the obvious, it feels like he's lying to us. And I fully get that. And especially with, some of like the Kyron Lacey stuff that's been going on and some of the other opportunities, him blowing up at the reporter after the Florida win. It's so frustrating. It just feels so much more frustrating and it magnifies everything and puts all these, puts like extra eyes on LSU. And I'll say it like this, against a South Carolina defense that has not been awesome. I think the best outcome for this team in this game is Michael Van Buren reps. Let me tell you why. Either Garrett Nussmeier is right and this offense is what it should be, and they are up in the fourth quarter and they get to bring him in to protect Nussmeier from taking extra hits, or Nussmeier does not have it and there is a switch made. Okay.
Wow.
And so I always say, give me a 2 or give me an 8. I think those are what you want to see out of a game like this. I do not want to see Garrett Nussmeier down to the wire again against South Carolina. This is the game last year. He got hit so hard that refs just felt bad for him and gave him a penalty. Like he just got Pelayed. That was the penalty. Like 15 yards, you Pelayed Garrett Nussmeier. And so this is like obviously different guys. Like they've lost a lot. We talked about that on defense. But I think for LSU, it's about literally seeing what you have ahead of a Vanderbilt team that's been better than you. I mean, so I think that they have one game to either get right or determine that what they have is wrong. And what worries me so much about that is that Brian Kelly has been so stubborn. And it's so funny because he's layering in these answers about, oh, we trust some of the young guys, talking about up and down the offensive line, Kyle Parker, those guys, which is what he used to struggle with, like not playing Harold Perkins early. So it's almost like he's progressing, but every time something like good happens, something bad happens. It's like an equal zero-sum game with this team where the defense was horrible. Okay, now the offense is horrible, and it always has to equate to like a 9-3 team. And so I say that to say this stretch is going to be so big for LSU. I could either see them getting right, and again, the offense clicking, and it being like kind of the situation that you talked about in the preseason where, hey, close loss to number 4 Ole Miss on the road. What can you do? It's the SEC. And we're looking back in a couple of weeks saying that, and everyone's happy. Or there's like Brian Kelly still says ridiculous stuff and they're still mad at him, but they got to respect him, basically. Or we're going, yeah, this team is kind of dead in the water because the issues that we have talking about health, like you can't scheme health. Offensive line play, not really something you can fix in the regular season. And even health to, Aaron Anderson, Caden Durham. Caden Durham, I didn't realize how impactful he was because LSU couldn't really run the ball. But without him, it's been even worse. So that being said, like, I hate to just not make this about South Carolina in that way. But I just, these are two teams that I honestly feel bad for because they're, these are the first and second team all SEC players or all SEC quarterbacks. And we're getting a game that I think is going to be a rock fight no matter what.
I feel bad for Garrett Nussmeier if he's taking free shots from Dylan Stewart. I don't know that LSU has the right personnel to slow him down. We will see. The South Carolina pass rush as a whole with Stewart, with Brian Thomas Jr., different Brian Thomas Jr., not the one that LSU fans know very well. But if you're hearing those names a lot on Saturday night, this is not going well. That is bad news bears for LSU. Justin Okonkwo, the former Alabama transfer, the All Bang the Drum team member, the former Germany native. Yeah, that's right. Is he originally from, where's he originally from? I can't remember, but he's from Germany originally. Nick Saban loved this guy, recruited him to Alabama, and he's playing really, really well so far for South Carolina. He's doing like the exact freaky things that they hoped he was going to do. But for me, the key to this game is Caden Durham. He is expected to return after he missed the Ole Miss game, and LSU just decided, oh, well, we're just not going to run the football at all. we're not even going to pretend to have a run game. That is so important in this one because South Carolina has had its issues defending the run in SEC play this year. I think it wouldn't surprise me if South Carolina keeps this close early and we're all kind of going, oh boy, this LSU offense, are they going to wake up? This game was so competitive last year. Big time revenge game for South Carolina after they felt very much robbed by the way that those two plays occurred, and ultimately they feel like it cost them a playoff berth. This will mean a lot to South Carolina. They're going to come out firing, and it wouldn't surprise me if Lenore Sellers is making dazzling plays, and also maybe he takes a costly sack or two to knock them out of field goal range. Like that's all very much on the table whenever Lenore Sellers steps on the field, especially against a good defense like LSU has. I think again though, the LSU defense does the heavy lifting and just does enough to give LSU's offense just that breathing room. That 9.5 number, Will, is so weird to me. It's so weird to me that I'm just going to listen to Vegas. I'm just going to listen to Vegas and say LSU finds a way to win this one 28-17 and cover that spread. They are daring you to take the South Carolina points. Daring you. Like if I had guessed the line for this one, like we used to do, and I know that's a big Bill Simmons cousin Sal thing, I would have said like LSU minus 2.5. And instead that line is sitting at 9.5. And you know what? I'm gonna defer to that. I'm gonna defer to that more so than what my eyes have told me. Which so far my eyes have told me like these teams aren't really that far apart. LSU has more elements to its team that make me feel better. But this is going to be a weird game, I think, from start to finish. And even weirder would be LSU winning this game by double digits, even if it doesn't feel like they are double digits better than South Carolina.
Yeah, I wanted to go back through and kind of see. It really does feel like, it. I'm trying to think about what has kind of been more of a step back for South Carolina, and I guess it technically is the offense. Like I said, their defense hasn't been terrible. They were 12th in America last year in points a game, and this year they're down to 34th. But so I don't want to call this defense sorry at all. And I think it just comes down to health. Like again, two quarterbacks that are just kind of perpetually hurt at this point, and we don't know what they have. And I don't want to say anything too confidently, but I really do like LSU's defense against Sellers. I think when we talk about what we like about the South Carolina offense, it's guys losing the eye discipline, getting focused on Sellers, him making an incredibly sick throw. I feel like LSU has the talent to run step for step with the Nick Harbors of the world, which is crazy. Like, hey, design a guy to cover Nick Harbor. DJ Pickett, like LSU has some of those guys where it's like, hey, you actually can pin your ears back and get after him. You actually do have linebackers in, several weeks. They have Perkins, guys that can, Patrick Payton, guys that can take down Sellers one-on-one, which is so hard to do. So like I like LSU's defense in this one almost more than I do like them more than I like them against Lagway going into the game. That no one could have anticipated how that game went. But I think on the defensive side of the ball, LSU should feast. But the thing that's so strange is like they're just wholly unable to turn that into momentum. It should be so easy for some of these teams to get going where it's like, okay, how you have the big play, you have 5 picks, just get an easy field goal, and then the whole crowd is rocking and we're behind you. So that being said, like I don't want to again dump on South Carolina too much because they're a team that got a lot of preseason love. We like them. We like their coach. Sellers has been awesome, but he's just been asked to do too much. And like I said, against a well-coordinated defense, I think that's where he's kind of struggled, where it's like he can't make guys miss. He can't make guys lose discipline. But I think the national conversation about this game, not just me, is more about LSU and how this affects their aspirations. And like I said, if this is a close game, because I'm right there with you, I don't really trust LSU to cover a 10-point spread. But the other side of it is if they get right and are what we thought they were, even after the Clemson game, this should be a South Carolina team that's kind of like ripe for the taking. So yeah, like I said, Michael Van Buren snaps is what I'm looking at. If they can get up a couple scores, take Nuss out, I'm like, okay, we're in a great place. Whereas, or he's so bad that he's like, again, doing the lag way and we got to make a change. And I want to see how Brian Kelly manages that. I'm not predicting it, but I think that we need to know if this team has whatever aspirations that it has. Like, let's take the championship out of it. Let's just talk about your schedule, competing for the SEC, what's right in front of you. I think that they need to find some type of way to generate a run game. And I think too, I won't stay on this too long, obviously, but I mean, it's so underrated how Brian Kelly has needed, or needed is the word at this point, needed mobile quarterbacks throughout his career, right? And that's some of the stuff, even like kind of down his coaching tree that we've seen, where guys are like, hey, I need a guy who can run a little bit to keep this offense moving. And now that he has kind of this statuesque pocket passer who objectively, not that he's a bad player, but didn't recruit him, right? Whenever he brought in a guy, it was Jaden Daniels, who is the most electric running quarterback we've seen. And he was able to move the offense with his legs. It's almost like I'm realizing that even the best version of Nussmeier, you still need a running element in a good system under Brian Kelly.
Ian Book, Tommy Reese, Everett Golson.
That's the guy. Yep.
Who am I forgetting? Malik Zaire, former Florida quarterback as well. Look, there is going to be a level of panic for LSU if they lose this game that outside of Clemson, I don't know that anybody in college football has experienced quite yet. That would be the storyline if South Carolina pulls off an upset. But we're still talking about South Carolina pulling off something that would be really, really remarkable, which is winning at Death Valley at night, something that Brian Kelly he's only lost that game once, and it was to Alabama last year. But yeah, this is going to be such a narrative forming game for LSU for the rest of the season, seeing how they come out of this bye week. All right, well, fate of the week. Yeah, we're at fate of the week territory. We're back at fate of the week territory after Penn State minus 24.5 was a little off. A little.
Just a bit. But you would rather this result, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. If Penn State wins that game by 12, that's so lame. Also, how are you winning by 12, Penn State? Yeah, losing is way more impressive. I have more outright losses to teams that I have picked to cover 3-score spreads than I have just wins against the spread, because I picked Clemson to cover against Syracuse, and boy, did they not. So we are back into fate of the week territory. I'm acknowledging that. We are also going back to emotional hedging. It has reached that point. Oregon's a 7.5-point favorite against Indiana, Will. Not sure if you heard. Top 10 matchup in Eugene this weekend.
This is going to be an all-time coaching vibes game. I actually need to go research the quotes that are starting to come out already. I want like specific dedicated cameras on these coaches throughout this one.
Dan Lanning, Curt Cignetti, very different paths that they have followed to get to this point in their careers. I think Dan Lanning is someone that just survive and advance, doesn't care about all that other stuff, just cares about what his team is doing. Cignetti, whether he admits it or not, style points matter in this one because everybody and their mother dogged you last year for the Ohio State game, and you went in there and you're still just trying to make it look better at the very end and whatnot. IU is going to be desperate to try and keep this close, but keeping it close at Oregon, that's going to be really, really difficult. Cross-country flights. Chris Budden, a friend of the show, had a great rant on SiriusXM about how sick of hearing coaches like rant about the travel in the Big Ten, like how tired she is of this, like, oh, well, you know what? We had to go all this way and play this game at this body clock and that body clock. It's like, you signed up for this. You signed up for this. You're getting those bigger checks. And she's right with the way that athletes are now paid in these conferences, like literally being paid. You are a professional athlete and you're being asked to do this a couple of times in the season. You have to be ready for it. And I think that IU will struggle with that. Maybe they're going to complain. Maybe they won't. Ducks win by 2 scores. Emotional hedging. Maybe the only thing that can save me. Perhaps the only thing that can save me is betting against my alma mater. That's it.
I love that you pick these like mercurial games that can go like so many ways that are like prime time. Like nobody's hiding from your picks. Like it's not like sometimes you have kind of picked the off the beat like games like that you've seen something. But
that's
I like
my problem.
It's just like
it might be.
You got to just pick like a Wyoming game here and there that people are locked into, to where you can just be like, "Did Wyoming win last week? We'll call it a tie." You know?
Yeah, you're right. Picking too close to the heart, maybe on some of these. Oh well. Anything's on the table. It's fate of the week though. So if I miss, then I'm winning you money. That's all.
I'm trying to think of a guy who roots against his alma mater in football more than you. Maybe Paul Feinbaum. Hey, every time we talk Indiana, you're like they're trash. It's like, bro, I don't know. I feel like I'd be pretty happy if I was you.
I've experienced a lot of moments in which I thought, how is this team still producing football? What's the point? So when you're as jaded as I am, when you've seen the product, and again, I don't truly consider myself an Indiana football fan. I am an Indiana graduate who wants to see good things happen for my university, but I'd be lying if I told you that I have blood, sweat, and tears that have gone into Indiana football. Just simply not the case. You as an LSU football fan, that is entirely different than me hoping good things happen for Indiana football and taking pride in seeing what they have become, and the fact that they're the fact that College Game Day is going to be there for a top 10 matchup in which IU is the draw on the road. Yes, I take great pride in that. Am I also always waiting for the rug to be pulled from under them? Yes. Yes, I am, Will. Yeah.
All right. And you know what I think really quick too, I'm not going to stay on this for too long, but I think Cignetti might remind you of Tom Crean a little bit. I think that might be what's going on here. You don't think so?
There. No. Nope. More respect for Cignetti than Tom Crean. I'll say that. Georgia fans, you agree with me, right? Tom Crean, great as an analyst. As a human being dealing with the media, not my favorite. Smartest guy in the room, though. Just ask him. All right, let's kick it to Laura Rutledge. Always enjoy chatting with Laura, who has seen a ton already in this young football season, both in college and in the NFL. So we discuss all that. Here is Laura Rutledge. For those of you who are not watching Saturday Down South podcast on YouTube and just are audio only, now would be a good time to go on YouTube and subscribe to Saturday Down South, because we have all of our episodes are uploaded in full. If you like watching our individual game breakdowns, you're like, hey, you know what? 2-hour pod, that's really not for me. I really just kind of want to hear about my own team. That's fine. Saturday Down South on YouTube. We're going to have all of those matchup breakdowns. We do every single power conference game. We preview, we recap. that involve the SEC. So we have so much content right now on Saturday Down South on YouTube. We have YouTube exclusive videos, and sometimes we'll do interviews that are just on Saturday Down South on YouTube. So definitely go subscribe. Please do that right now. Now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is Laura Rutledge. Laura, before we talk about a bunch of different things that have happened already this football season, let's start with one of the best parts of football season, Honey Baked Ham. As we've discussed, I'm a huge fan. I literally got the Honey Baked Ham
Yes,
helmet in the
let's
background.
go.
Um, tell us about everything you're doing with them and why it's become such a game day essential.
Yeah, I absolutely love this time of year because there's so many great things to talk about with honey baked ham, and tailgating, of course, is the centerpiece of all of that. And this is a little bit rare that this would happen. You just kind of lucked out here. I actually have the take and serve sliders with me today.
Let's
I brought
go.
them to work. This is hilarious. So you're getting video evidence of how great these are. I wanted to show you, and this is really cool because in the past you had to, and there's still some of these sliders that you do bake, and they're super easy to make. They're like, takes 20 minutes to bake them. But these you just take directly out of the store, and they are delicious. I've got like a really big bacon pull going here. Let me just, okay, there we go. But look at this. You've got the ham, obviously, the signature honey baked ham. You have the oven roasted turkey, bacon, cheddar, all on that soft bread. It's so good. I'm not going to eat it yet. I'm just going to make both of our mouths water, but I'm planning on eating all of these for lunch. So anyway, these are such a hit at tailgates, though. Like, everybody loves them. They're great for kids. They're great for anybody who just wants to grab and go and be kind of like roaming around your tailgate. And I think the best part is that, it's so accessible. You can just go into your local honey bake store. You can order online, however you want to pick them up, and they show up great. And just all the slider options are delicious. The take and bake sliders are so good too. They have the garlic butter that's on the top of them, and they just it never fails to be a great thing. And I think too, there's a lot of opportunities. Like, if you want to do something really extra special for your tailgate and really surprise people, you can always get one of the bone and half hams from Honey Bake that are that's just sort of synonymous with knowing that you did something extra for your guests, and everybody loves it. So it's a great time of year to celebrate Honey Baked and tailgating.
We need some Honey Baked Ham, just breaks from SEC Nation. Like, once, like the cut to break, and here's this local cuisine that you just all of the Honey Baked Ham creations, because like it's all right there, and just bust out the whole, half ham and just have people just picking at it. Like, that seems like
Yeah.
that's got to come to an SEC Nation very, very soon.
I, you know what? I'm going to pitch this, and I'm going to give you some credit because we see, it's pretty cool when I go to these campuses. You see people have honey baked at their tailgate. The sliders are obviously a fan favorite, but you will see certainly some of the bone and half hams. And I'm always like, can I come in and eat a little bit of this? You never get tired of eating this great food. It's so convenient, but it's also delicious, which you just don't see that many things that are like that.
Okay, what is the wildest thing that you have been asked to eat on television that you've either been like,
Ooh.
I'm not doing this, or screw it, let's just do it.
Okay, so this is actually recent. We were at LSU earlier this year in Baton Rouge, and they wanted me to eat alligator. And first of all, I felt like that was cannibalistic because I am a gator, so I didn't feel that was going to be the right thing to do. But also, it seemed like it had been sitting there for a while. I was like, I don't know, I got to keep hosting this show. Like, I don't have time to, maybe have a bathroom break or something. So anyway, I did not partake, but normally I am game to try all sorts of different things. And I've probably eaten some odd things. I did actually eat frog legs on TV one time too. That was also in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, of course.
That Louisiana cooking is always good. But yeah, that's probably the weirdest one. And I did say no.
I would say no too. Frog
Yeah.
legs, come on. There's a line here. Gator's one thing, but if you're a non-gator, that's a different story. But especially one that had been sitting out, I don't blame you one bit for that.
No, couldn't do it.
Yeah, go in whatever direction you want with this. Who are your favorite college football players so far this season? It can either be watching them, or players that you've
Yeah.
interviewed that you've just come away with and been like, dang, like, I love watching Ahmad Hardy at Mizzou. I know you guys are going to be at Mizzou this weekend. Like Aaron
Yes.
Anderson at LSU, Haynes King, obviously. Like, who have been your favorites so far?
That's a great question. I love John Mateer. I'm really excited to see if he's able to come back for this Texas game. He just plays with such tenacity, but he's also really talented and has this way about him that I think means he's going to be a great leader. Not only we've already seen it in college, but I think he's going to be really good on the next level too. If he gets a chance to play in the NFL, which I think he should. He's been really cool to talk to. Whit Weeks is a favorite of mine. I just think he kind of represents, what it's like to be this defensive guy that just never wants to take a play off, wants to give it all to his team. Those guys are great. I really enjoy talking to Ryan Williams at Alabama. I know at times, there are people who have said he's controversial or whatever it is. I think he is a really interesting young man and has been, I believe, very self-aware about some of the maybe criticisms toward him, but also has let his personality continue to shine through. He's been a real good one to talk to as well. So I would say those three right now, but my goodness, I mean, it's been such an interesting year so far. I realize we're not that far into it where there's been stars emerge that people maybe didn't see coming. And then some that we thought were going to be stars that haven't necessarily lived up to that yet, but there's still a lot of time, right? It could all change.
What's the worst preseason take that you had that you've already thrown out? I mean, I've had loads of those so far. So like I've discussed it with our audience, but what's one that you're already like, we're bailing on this one. This isn't going to end up pretty good.
I really thought that Arch Manning was going to come out of the gates being amazing. And listen, I'm not saying I'm going to totally ditch that take, not because I want to be right. Like I realize I am wrong all the time. But I just still feel like he's going to figure it out. And I feel like Sark's going to figure it out. And maybe it's going to be too late for them to really be a playoff contender, which is a bummer considering, what Sark has built there and really some of the talent they have around him at certain positions. But, I don't know. I thought just in what I had seen, I've covered Texas a lot. I watch him in practice and I know practice is not a game, but I thought he had so much talent and so much ability and just even in the conversations that I had with some of their staff, it just felt like they were ready and poised for him to be a big breakout this season, a breakout player this season. So again, there's still time to, maybe redeem some of this, but I am pumping the brakes a little bit on how good I thought he would be right out of the gate.
You were at the Swamp last weekend for that disappointing Arch Manning performance. I was there as well. How much credit do you give that Florida performance to Tebow being able to bust out the tank top, fire up the crowd, and remind us all that not all bicep veins are created equally?
My goodness, that's funny. That whole thing, let me peel back the curtain a little bit because Tim is just great. I mean, as much as like if you're a fan of Tim Tebow, I just promise you right now, he's even better than you think he is. Like he is just a gold-hearted person and he is so wonderful. And he's so funny because he does obviously bleed orange and blue and it's tough for him to pick against Florida. And we actually had a conversation. I was sitting in this seat last Thursday, I believe it was. And he's like, what can I do? I want to find a way to still give love to Florida, even if I feel like I have to pick Texas. And we were kind of talking back and forth and it gets to the point where I'm like, what if Tim, you got to rip your shirt off or something, which like, that's not even a normal thing to suggest, but it just felt like that it needed to be something like that. And so that was where we landed. But the funniest thing was we have a great production team and they went out and we were like, it needs to be a tank top. So they went out trying to buy a tank top for Tim. And I think the one that he was wearing was like a large or extra large or whatever it was, but it looked like a medium or a medium on him because he's obviously a big man. And we were laughing so hard. We're like, Tim, you could wear the bigger size. And he's like, no, it needs to be like this because it just accentuated the whole thing. It was better than I even expected it would be. And I do think, listen, I'm not saying the team necessarily saw that, but I think what you felt being in Gainesville, I'm not sure if you felt this too. I felt like there was a bit of a groundswell of confidence amongst Florida fans and amongst just everybody involved. It felt like they were in a position to potentially get that upset win. And I would credit the noise in the swamp, but also a ton of credit goes to DJ Lagway, Billy Napier, and the defense on the other side.
And for what it's worth, aggregators, please do not do the headline. Laura Rutledge convinces Tim Tebow to take shirt off. We don't need that. That's not the context of what we're talking about here.
You are great spouses. We do not need that. And it wasn't like that. It was just, we were trying to think of something memorable and it was memorable. It worked.
Gators join heads to pump up 1-3
there
Florida
we go.
team. That's
I
all
like
that
that
matters. Yeah.
See, you're so good. That's great.
What's your level of optimism that Florida weathers this storm again and the best version of the Gators comes out? Just always when Billy Napier is dead man walking because that atmosphere it was second to none and it felt like they were trying to will that team to victory.
It's so interesting how this team, I saw somebody tweet this and I can't remember who it was, so I feel bad not getting credit, but it was like, maybe it was Peter Burns, but it was like, okay, the best teams in college football are this team, this team, this team, and Florida whenever Billy Napier's job is on
That
the
was
line.
Saturday Down South, actually. That was my guy,
It
Will
was,
Ogburn.
okay,
Yeah.
did you
Yeah.
tweet that?
I did not tweet that. That's my
Oh,
co-host Will Ogburn, who was on our
okay, well,
socials on Saturday. So literally us. Yeah.
okay, so that's amazing. I didn't do that on purpose. That's so funny. Sorry, Peter Burns. I didn't mean to like give you credit and take it away, but I'll give it to Saturday Down South. You guys have some great tweets. I really thought that was true when I read it. Like it just I don't know what's going on with this, but it does show that they have a ton of love for their coach and that they realize if they can play better and play beyond, maybe what they even thought they were capable of, then maybe they save his job. And it just seems like it always comes down to that. I will say this, and this is not making excuses for Florida. It's just the reality. Their schedule has been brutal these last 2 years, and that's true. For this year, that was obviously true last year. They were able to finish strong. I think they're capable of a lot. If DJ Lagway can play the way that he played last week against what I believe is a really good Texas defense, then yeah, they're going to be in every game down the stretch. I mean, he can be so dangerous. And there were even times, I'm not trying to say that we were right about this because everybody on SEC Nation picked Texas to win, but there were times that we mentioned in our show, and I believe this. I mean, we saw it on display. DJ Lagway is a guy that's capable of changing games, and we've seen that, right? And then we've also seen the opposite version of that. So it's going to be about maintaining the focus that they had in this game and really continuing to try to protect Billy Napier's job. I mean, you wonder how Florida administration and how even some fans feel if they continue to win. It does sort of give him some security, but there are some people that don't love that. So I was happy for him. I was happy for the way that they pulled this off. And I do think they're capable of maintaining it down the stretch. It just, a lot of it, per usual, comes down to the quarterback play.
You're going back to Columbia for Alabama-Mizzou. Can you explain the story of Feinbaum pivoting and then convincing your crew to be at the border war for Kansas-Mizzou week 2?
Yeah, so that was interesting. We were kind of looking at, options, and we had thought back at SEC Media Days, we're like, man, Missouri's going to be good, and they have a pretty favorable schedule, if you can say that. I mean, the SEC, it's hard to say that, but we're like, okay, we need to go there. And we missed going there a couple years ago or a year ago, whenever it was. So we were trying to find a chance to go. And we saw the Kansas game, and we were going to do something else. I forget what we were doing that week. But anyway, Feinbaum was like, no, we need to go to this game. He said, this is going to be crazy, and the atmosphere is going to be crazy, the border war, all that. And really, a lot of us had never experienced that before. And we walked out of there, we're like, golly, these two fan bases hate each other. I mean, we say that in the SEC. Certainly, we understand rivalries better than really any college football fan does, outside of the league. This is a whole new level of a rivalry. I mean, our crowd, some of the things that people were saying and some of the signs that we were like, oh no, we can't show that on TV. That's not safe for broadcast. But anyway, so yeah, it paid off. It was an incredible atmosphere, great show out for our show. And I'm expecting that again. I think it's going to be another great crowd. And this game, I mean, goodness gracious, for Missouri, they're a team that I think is 100% capable of knocking off maybe more talented opponents. And I'm not taking anything away from Missouri's talent because Eli Drinkwitz has built a great roster. But Alabama's really talented. And Ty Simpson has been playing like one of the best, if not the best quarterback in all of college football. It can be a tough place to play there, and weird things have happened in Como. So I'm expecting this to be a great matchup, and I think the Missouri fans are going to make it pretty tough on Alabama, and the Missouri team make it tough on Alabama.
If you guys are talking storylines in the production meeting for that game, I just want to know the backstory of Ahmad Hardy because the Columbia Daily
Yes.
Tribune wrote like a really good story about his background coming up and he dealt with some tough circumstances growing up as a
Yeah.
kid, but just how this guy is so good already as a sophomore after he
Mm.
spends his freshman year at Louisiana Monroe. Nobody had heard of him. He comes from the SEC geographical footprint. Like if you guys do nothing on Saturday, but find out the story of Ahmad Hardy, like I'd be here for it. I
What's
think it's going to be
this?
such an interesting thing to talk about.
Challenge accepted. And it's interesting. We are actually working on a couple of different angles for Ahmad Hardy. So I don't know exactly which ones we're going to do yet. I'm actually talking to our SEC Nation producer after NFL Live today. So I'll get a little bit more details on that. But I can assure you that that investigation is underway. We are going to peel back the curtain on Ahmad Hardy as much as we can, and what an incredible story so far. Like, he is so fun to watch play. I love that you mentioned him as one of your favorite players in the league so far. It's crazy too, because it always feels to me with Missouri. This has been true with, even different coaches back when Gary Pinkel was there. It feels like they get the most out of their talent and more than others expected, and they find these diamonds in the rough. And it's just such a proud program. And Ahmad Hardy is like the latest example of that. Like, where are they finding these people? And they come in and they play great. And watch out for Missouri. They are fully in the mix, I believe, to make a playoff run if things continue to go their way.
You guys are gonna probably do the thing where you go down to the field, right? Like before the game because it's an
Yes.
11 a.m. kick. So you're gonna
Yes.
have all the live shots that are right there.
Oh yeah, the whole last part of our show on Saturday will be like the last hour of our show will be inside the stadium, which is super fun.
Have you like what are those like? Have you had like a realization like when you guys transitioned down to the field where you've like had to step back and you've seen something completely differently and been like, oh my God, like I didn't realize like this player was that big. Like like seeing Arch Manning in person the very first time I was like, this dude is like he's big, he's thick. Like what's like
Yeah.
a moment of like wow, like or just some sort of realization you've had being down on the field.
Yeah, that's a great question. It is usually about the size of players. And I will say this, sometimes we're like, wow, that guy's smaller than we expected. Sometimes people play bigger on TV somehow. But I think too, like, we actually glean a lot from being down there and seeing the energy of both sides. And oftentimes in those shows where we are there for pregame warmups, I'll ask the guys, like, okay, what sense are you getting? Certainly former players who have been on those fields in those moments and before big games, or know that so well. Like, sometimes they can sense the energy of people and figure it out. I was surprised too about Arch Manning's size when I that didn't happen like in a warm up situation, but when I was at practice, I was like, golly, he's bigger than what you would think. Maybe just watching him on TV. And I'm trying to think of another example of somebody, but maybe Ty Simpson. I was on the
Hmm.
field. I did the Alabama-Georgia game, and I was on Georgia's sideline, but we were, midfield for pregame warmups. And Ty Simpson's bigger than you realize. And really, like, I mean, now we've seen it more on display, but I think people didn't realize how athletic he is, and just the variety of skill set that he possesses at the quarterback spot. So he's another candidate for somebody that, kind of surprises you when you see him.
Last one before I get you out of here with some rapid fire. One of your SEC Nation co-hosts, he's potentially going to be stepping into a different role than what was expected. And I was, just curious if you had any thoughts on potentially, and we don't know if this is going to happen yet, but like if Jordan Rodgers is going to be a stay-at-home dad, like if that's just something that, like what would be your thoughts if like he just kind of went in a different direction and was like, oh, this football thing isn't for me anymore.
Oh my goodness. Well, it's funny because knowing Jordan, I know that he really loves this, and he is so excited to be a dad. And he and JoJo are just going to be awesome parents. Like, I'm so thrilled for them, and it's just really cool. It's like so fun watching people who I consider really good friends. I mean, Tim and Demi, just had baby Daphne, so we've kind of seen them go through it, and now Jordan and JoJo. What I know about Jordan, though, is that he really loves football. So as much as he's going to love this child, and they're going to be amazing parents, I don't see him being a stay-at-home dad. I think he'll maybe, find ways to spend as much time at home as possible, but he's probably still gonna do the football thing as much as he can.
There was like a 1% chance you thought I was going in that direction. That's
That
okay.
did you see
Yeah.
my face? I was like,
Yeah.
interesting. You know what I thought I was gonna do? Here was my plan. I was just gonna take a bite of my slider.
That's you know what?
Sorry, I
I
can't
need
talk.
I need a tray of honey baked sliders
Yes,
just to be
me
able to
too.
answer that question because I've already been asked that question so far. Yeah, and jokes aside, like for what it's worth, Jordan is not actually considered that. I like texted him right when he made the announcement and stuff like that, which is like so happy for him.
Oh, he's the
He's the
best.
best.
I'm
He's
so
gonna be
pumped for
awesome for it.
them. It's
Um,
awesome.
let's get you out of here with some rapid fire. Just 5 questions. First thing that comes to
Thanks.
mind. And by the way, these are only food questions because obviously we're talking honey baked ham. Does that work for you?
Love that.
All right. So you've been asked this before, but what is a Dan Orlovsky food take that has actually grown on you?
Oh, Dan likes Mentos, and I like Mentos, but he likes the strawberry kind. So I agree with that.
That's basically a Starburst at this point, if we're being
Yeah,
honest. Mentos
there
is mint.
it's not a mint, right? It's just a candy.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of candy, what's the Halloween candy that you're going to steal the most from your kids?
Oh, I love those mini Snicker bars. Because then you're like, oh, I didn't really eat a whole Snicker bar. I guess 5 or 6 later you kind of did, which is what I do. But yeah.
That's the correct answer. Um, lemonade, sweet tea, or a little Arnold Palmer mix.
Ooh, I'm gonna go sweet tea. I recently had some somewhere we work for SEC Nation. And I was like, dang, this is good. I forgot
When
about sweet tea.
when it hits right, it's very, very
It
good.
does, right?
What's your favorite restaurant to eat at in the SEC?
Ooh, that's a hmm. I'm gonna say Chuck's Fish in Tuscaloosa. It is just a classic and it's always so good. They actually have great sushi, really fresh fish. They get everything from the Panhandle, like Destin area, I think. So yeah, Chuck's is great.
I think they did sushi for game day this past
Yes,
week.
they did. And you probably saw Kirk Herbstreit
Just
couldn't,
eating
sorry,
his.
Kirk, I'm shouting you out. The Ohio in him, he didn't know how to use chopsticks, which chopsticks can get you now, you know? If you don't have the right leverage, you're in a pickle.
It's you just gotta spend a little time with it. You figure it out.
Yeah.
Herbie will be just fine. Yeah. All right. Last
Right.
one for you. When you show up at someone's house for Thanksgiving, what's a kind way to tell them that, ooh, that's a you shouldn't have had turkey in there. They messed up. They should have had honey baked ham.
I just show up with a honey baked ham,
Yeah,
with the
that's it.
bone in half ham. It's got the glaze on it. It's so good. And everyone eats that. And everyone's like, oh, man. They also have great turkey. So you could bring some turkey if you're really a turkey person. The turkey is delish.
That's a good answer. Just bring your own. It's
Just bring
just
your own. Oh, whoops. Sorry.
yeah.
You're not going to
Oh,
say no. Everyone's
got
going to
this
be
whole
like, that's
ham.
great. Right.
Yeah. Laura, really appreciate the time. Best of luck. I know your schedule is nonstop. You've been all over the place. So I know you got a lot of fun stuff coming up this football season.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I hope we cross paths one of these places. I know we were in Gainesville together last week. I didn't even see you. So you got to
I
let me know where you are.
I gotta be there for SEC Nation. That was a mistake on my part. I'm like,
Come see
trying to,
us.
you know how it is. I was like, I'm gonna drive there at 11 in the morning. I'm driving from
Yeah.
Orlando. I want to do the parenting thing in the morning, and then
Okay, I
get there.
support that. I
Yeah,
support that. But
yeah,
when you're not doing that, let us know. We'd love to have
definitely.
you.
Will do. Appreciate it, Laura. Lad of the week. Will, let's send the people on their way. We have some good vibes. Lad of the week this week.
We have a little bit of a vibes sandwich here. I'm going to start off with the the obvious pick, which is Jerry Neuheisel. I think it was so cool watching him call this game against Penn State and kind of a coming of age story in real time, right? It's like
How
he
old
looks
is
like
he,
an
Will? How old is he?
Oh man, he's so young. I don't even want to look it up, man. He is a lad. That's again, I'm getting to the age now at 31. You know, I had a birthday a couple weeks ago. It's like, yeah, these guys are all kind of my age, huh? And so, you know, the scene of him getting carried off the field twice, once as a player, once as a coach, the scene of his dad and the way he reacted, all-time dad reaction too. Like, love a dad reaction where it's like not even really like crying or anything. It's like, hey, go scamp, like let's go. Like that was just such a cool thing to see and why we love the sport for the upset. So I think that's a very easy one. I think that's a guy who's already on a ton of radars. You know, it's like the opposite of the Nepo baby treatment where he actually got put in a horrible situation and like made the best of it, where it's like everyone, if he had been terrible at this, because I feel like he's already kind of done enough with that one win that from here, you really can't mess it up. And if he had just been put in that position, like, okay, former player, coach's kid, like, of course, he's got the job. But it's like, no, he did the exact opposite and what very, very few could. So shout out to him. And then
Never
anything
called
on him
plays. Never called plays before. Can you imagine doing that your first game ever calling plays? I mean, I know you got the coach's DNA and stuff like that. And look, I've said some very negative things about Rick Neuheisel in the past, and I stand by all of them. But that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool to step up on that stage and just knowing how quickly that changed, because They fired Tino Sinceri on a Tuesday, I want to say, which is wild. We're not talking about Sunday where whole staff is just gutted or something like that. It's an interim staff that takes over, like what we were talking about with the Arkansas stuff. It's, oh, wait, they're parting ways and you're already late. And you got a top, whatever Penn State was at the time, like considered an elite opponent coming into your building. Learn how to call plays, buddy. Figure this out. He's 33, by the way. He looks like he's 23. Looks exactly like friend of the program, Joey Molinaro, which is funny.
He really does. Oh my gosh, that's what he looks like. Yes.
Same breed of human, very much so. But so cool. Like, see him get carried off like that. I mean, come on. How can you not be romantic about college football? An 0-4 team that's got like 12 people in the stands is playing, and then by day's end, they get that. Like, those to me are the stories that just make this sport so special.
100%. I know everybody says, Burrow looks like Kevin McAllister and everything, but like even the video of like his wife jumping into his arms after, it just felt like a movie. I mean, you just can't say it enough. Like, good for this kid. Yeah, like you said, 33 years old. Again, that's an old age. Not just kidding. It's not. I'm blown away by that, what he's able to do. On a more serious note, my second lad of the week is Kyron Lacey. Guys, be really careful about how you talk about this story. This is my overall takeaway here. I think that people were really sure one way and got very cold taked, and they were very sure the other way. And I think, before I get too deep into this, I think it's a little bit unfair to expect any member of LSU to have the right take on this. I think everyone is just kind of stepping back and letting the process, which we all should do. I think we're in an outrage society where, we're going both ways. I personally think, after seeing the video, that I think it was a case of distracted driving, not on Kyron Lacey's part. But again, there are so many facts yet to come out, and that's not an official opinion. That's just what I think at this point. So I'm not ready to go, to go to war or anything. I think it's super unfair with how the police department has handled this, and not to get, into any of that stuff. But I have lots of reasons to distrust kind of the official statement of police reports over time, and what I've seen with some of my friends and how they've been treated, especially my friends of color, growing up in Alabama, and just some of the things that I've seen just really make me suspicious of any official statement or official communication that comes out. So that's my takeaway on that. I would love to get up here and say that I know for a fact every part of this case, but I think it's going to be a long, drawn out battle, and that sucks. And I say that to say my overall takeaway here, guys, is please never, ever take your own life. Please, no matter how bad it gets, there's always tomorrow. And honestly, I've been there, a couple times where it's like, this is the bottom. It's not going to get better. And at the end of the day, man, even if you have like a little bit of that me and you want to prove people wrong, the best satisfaction you can have is proving those people wrong. The best satisfaction you can have is saying everybody thought I was X, and it turns out that I'm Y, and I knew my character the whole time, and the facts came out, and it exonerated me, or I at least, stood in there. And so I'm certainly not blaming him. The amount of stress and pressure he was under. Ryan Clark's statement, I think, was so beautiful on this about we're supposed to be watching him and all that. And it just sucks that also that every case in America right now, every news story gets so freaking politicized, and we can't even just be sad for this kid because it's got to be, well, Clay Travis has this to say, and this person has this person to say. It sucks to his family. There's just no way to say it. And at the end of the day, that's really my big takeaway here, guys, is that I'm not, like I said, I'm not decrying his decision. I'm not saying that I blame him or anything. I'm just saying that just know, case after case after case, people say, if they had just seen this while they were alive, the outpouring of support, stuff like that. So please check on your friends. If your friends are going through something, or if you just haven't heard from them in a while, just, see what's going on. Because a lot of times, especially kind of in our male world, that it's seen as weakness to, talk about your feelings and stuff like that. But he was obviously fighting a ton of demons, and it really sucks to see a guy that was so fun to watch and just light in the life of the LSU community. Guy that a Make-A-Wish kid has wished to meet Kyron Lacey. He's such an inspiration. And again, I will never know what it's like to be a college athlete and have the fate of how millions of people Saturday goes, even from the fans, the alumni, even down to the bettors and all that different stuff, have that riding on your shoulders with every snap. I know it's got to be so much higher level, but that being said, guys, like, just know, and if you're in my life and you ever feel that way, please give me a call. I promise I'll make time for you. But it just sucks to lose a life. And I think that's the real takeaway here. Yeah.
And it sucks for his family too, having to relive this thing that is not going anywhere. Like this story that gets, this layer comes out and that layer comes out. And you're just like, oh my God, like this, it's emotionally draining for those people that are involved in this. And, hopefully the truth will come to light and everybody will be able to get some semblance of peace from this and something could be taken away from it. But just a tragedy, like in every possible way. It sucks to see that it's played out the way that this did, regardless of how good he was at LSU, but just a situation that just like makes me sick to see. And I've almost I'll be 100% honest, like I've almost avoided this story at points because I'm like, oh, it's just such a bummer to read about somebody that obviously like had things just going so wrong at the very end of his life. But yeah, just a wildly sad story for his family. And it just sucks that they have to go through this.
And I'll say really quick, one more thing. Like we see this all the time in sports. We're seeing it honestly right now with Baker Mayfield, where it's like nobody believed in this guy. He was decried. He was playing defensive end in practice. It only takes a couple of good days or one good day to turn your life around. We've seen, again, just to put it in the context of sports, these backup quarterbacks that have been sitting around for years thinking, I'm never going to get a shot, and they do. So just know that applies to your life too. You could have 5 bad years in a row, and all it takes is one conversation, one day to change your mindset. So just know that, like, all those guys probably felt like they could have given up. Baker Mayfield was like, I'm going to be bagging groceries, but he just hung on. And that's all I think is fair to ask, is just to wake up and fight for another day because the people around you love you.
Or if you're Baker Mayfield, all it takes is one Liam Cohen, and then your entire career gets turned around. Just saying.
There you go.
Liam Cohen would be a good choice for Lad of the Week this week after knocking off Pat Mahomes on Monday Night Football. I am not going to go with my doppelganger, though, as tempting as it is. Buck Mahoney, that's a name you do not know. Nobody listening to this knows that name. He is the first boss that I had at the newspaper in Kearney, Nebraska, and he just retired after 40 years. 40 years at that job, retired just in time for MLB playoffs. And it's a shame what so many local newspapers are turning into. They 3 full-time members of that staff now, a staff that was, had like 20 some odd people, I think, when I was there, with full-time workers. And it's like, in some ways, it's just such a bummer to think about somebody that in a different life gets a very ceremonious exit. Instead, it's kind of just this like, you know what, they're down to this, and this is what they're doing. But I'm very grateful for Buck, because when you are trying to get into this field and you're trying to figure out, how in the world am I going to make a living doing this? How am I going to, make sure that I'm putting my college degree to good use? And you're trying to figure out, where's my first foot in the door going to be? You're just sort of begging anybody, just give me a chance, man. Like, give me a chance. And I always knew when I'm sitting there and I applied for 60 jobs after coming back from the Baseball Hall of Fame, thinking I had it made. And I applied for 60 jobs as a 22-year-old, thinking, well, surely I'm going to find a home. And once I do, I know I'm going to work my tail off and be able to get more and more opportunities. You're just begging for anybody to listen to you. And I had probably 3 interviews of those 60 jobs that I applied for. And one of them was with Buck in Kearney, Nebraska, a place I had never heard of, never visited the state of Nebraska or anything like that. And this first conversation that I had with him, like, it went really, really well. And like I always have said in my life, like, one thing has led to the next. And with, like, when I got Baseball Hall of Fame internship, it was because my boss at the Baseball Hall of Fame was a diehard Pirates fan. And he saw that I had worked for the AAA affiliate for the Pittsburgh Pirates, because that was the Indianapolis Indians. And I had just spent a summer interning with them. And with Buck, he saw that I had worked at the Baseball Hall of Fame, loved baseball. Like, we watched more Kansas City Royals games than I ever thought I would watch in a lifetime. And actually, when they got good, so that ended up being more fun. But I was so grateful for him that he saw something on my resume, saw something when we were able to have a conversation on the phone to say, hey, yep, here's your opportunity. And I worked my tail off for 2.5 years in that job, and, ended up having to drive 50 miles each way to do my job 6 days a week, because when Lauren moved down there, she was living in Grand Island, and we ended up living together. And Buck was just very, very good at what I needed at that time. And I always thought that, and maybe you thought this too, I always thought that when I got into journalism, that you would kind of get someone that would be like a mentor who would show you, hey, this is how you do this, and this, blah, blah, blah. And I remembered my first day there, my first 2 days, no idea what's going on. This guy won't help me. He won't show me the ropes. He's explaining things in such basic form. And I'm calling my mom going like, I think I'm screwed. Like, I don't know how I'm going to get any better at this. And there's a lesson in life about just being thrown in the deep end and figuring out how to swim. Just having to figure things out for yourself, having to figure out things in a place that I'd never been before. And Buck was not negligent, but he knew that I needed to do that. And I would be better if I did that. Now, he was still willing to like answer questions and stuff like that, but he wasn't going to be the person that was going to actively sit me down and go, hey, here's your 3-hour instructive, course on where Ord, Nebraska is. And hey, this is what you need to know about this coach, that coach. No. You need to get out there and you need to experience it. And Buck allowed me to do that. I'm very, very grateful for the role that he had in my life. Honestly, like one of the toughest goodbyes of leaving Nebraska was like realizing that I left a great boss, that by the time I was done there, we had developed such a good rapport of what to expect from one another. I understood him very, very well, I think, and I think he appreciated that. So Buck Mahoney, a legend in the Nebraska journalism world, who did that job for 4 decades. And I hope he gets to play just a ton of golf because he deserves that chapter in his life.
Yeah, I think that's such an underrated part of the journalism industry. Exactly what you just said, how there's kind of like that like fox and the hound relationship between the old guard and kind of the newer folks. And it was something that was kind of sacred, I would say, for a long time as far as teaching. When you get that job is so hard, man. Journalism is so hard. And I just hate the way that we regard journalists in this country right now for getting, little things wrong when it's like pitching in baseball. I mean, you just have so many reps over and over and over again. And, I'll never forget when I was with the Magic, John Denton and Josh Robbins. Josh Robbins is like the most like by the book. He's with the Wizards. He's with the Athletic covering the Wizards right now. And he would always call me young man. And it was so funny because I was, I was in my early 20s. So I was in that, oh, you're a big boy, you're an adult, young man. And then like I would ask him questions, the same thing. He'd just be a little bit like, how don't you know that? And then I'll never forget one day he said, hey, did you get that quote, young man? And I said, yeah, I did. And he goes, good job. And I was like, that was kind of my moment where I was like, I did something right. Like, heck yeah. Like those little moments of camaraderie within kind of, not even just a newsroom, but like a workroom where it's like, you guys are all coworkers, even though you work for different publications and maybe you're technically competing, but you're all trying to accomplish journalism together. So I think it's definitely what we're kind of missing and getting away from as we move to kind of more like opinion-based stuff. And so, yeah, man, I definitely can see that influence come through in you. And I laud the amount of kind of fact-checking and journalism you do. Like there have been plenty of times where I've texted you, oh, did you see this? It's like, it's not verified yet. Let's wait. Like, let's do this the right way. It actually happened this week. And so, yeah, I mean, I can definitely see that you were coached up the right way.
Some of the best times that I have, you talk about like having someone that you can just, like trust their opinion and trust like, what comes out of their mouth matters just so much more. And at that stage in life, when you're in your early 20s, it just hits in a way that for me, like honestly at 35 now, it just would not have the same sort of gravitas to it. But like having these moments on a Friday night after covering high school football, and we've got to, finish up the sports section. We've got to edit all the pages and stuff like that. We've got to be able to write all of our stories, make sure our stats are right, make sure every kid's name is spelled right. And it's like Friday night covering high school football and sports desk is like a very intense atmosphere. And we would always like those moments that are so sacred to me were the moments of like, hey, it's off to the press. We're going to sit here for like 10 or like 20 minutes, wait for it to come out to press and just sit here and decompress. And those moments I look back on so fondly, and it was really important. I know in my journalism career, and I know, being able to just sit there and talk in like a less stressful atmosphere like that with someone, what did you see tonight and stuff like that was something that I hold very near and dear. So yeah, Buck, great dude. Play so much golf, man. All right. Hopefully week 7 is great. I think it will be. I think week 7 is going to be absolutely awesome, guys.
If it's not, it'll be a shocker with all these games. I'm fired up, man.
Listen, this is not Pumpkin Patch Saturday. This is start to finish lock in. Great games that we have in the Southeastern Conference, especially. Please leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every episode of the Saturday Down South podcast. Follow us on Twitter at the SDS Pod, at Set Down South, at CJ Guerrero, at Go So Hard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.